Well. Welcome.
The OGs are back.
welcome to IB After Dark. And myself, Vince D'Addario, Brian Driscoll, he's the publisher. I'm the football analyst. This is old school, baby, because it's just me and Brian, and we're talking keys to victory for Notre Dame USC. I said to Brian when we were talking about doing the show this afternoon, I said, hey, do you want me to go break into Riley and I can go into my old classroom?
Yeah.
We could really make it old school. But he's like, no. You stay in the bright green room.
Yes.
We can't go too far off the map here. But
yeah.
I'm pumped, man. I haven't written out keys to the game in a really long time. And I'm kind of pumped up for this, right? I'm kind of excited for this. So welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Brian and I are going to take you through our keys to a Notre Dame victory over the Southern Cal Trojans on Saturday night at 7:30. We are both fired up for it. And just to get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. All of the fun things that we always ask you to do and that you are also willing and able to do as well. And we're going to have some pre-programmed stuff tomorrow, but then we're going to be back on Friday, Brian. We're going to have a 1:00 show where we are going to have our predictions show.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, I got to get you those.
Yes.
We're going to have our prediction show.
I was going to yell at you about that off
fair.
the air, but now that you're bringing it up.
I'll bring it up. I got to get that to you.
Yeah.
But we're going to have our prediction show at 1:00 that I'm also going to be a part of because it is Black Friday and, good institutions don't have school on Black Friday. So I will be a part of that show. And then we have Countdown to Kickoff on Sunday morning, 10 a.m.
Saturday morning.
Yep. It's going to be me and Stiers Jr. Jesse's going to join me because Sean is soaking it up in the Bahamas with the women's basketball team. So we can all shed a tear for him because he's in the Bahamas with not so good internet. And so Jesse and I will take you home and we will get you fired up and get you ready. And then we're going to start at 7:30, probably not right on the dot, a little earlier maybe.
We'll start at 7.
Okay.
We're just going to do a pregame and just kind of go over it and have some fun. Yeah.
So 7:00. We're going to do something that we've never done before, which is really exciting. We are going to do a live game watch, and we're going to invite all of you to watch the game with us. And obviously, we can't show you the game. There's all kinds of laws about that. But we are going to watch the game ourselves, and you're going to watch it with us. And we're just going to comment as we go and just have some fun, which I'm super fired up about. So join us. We'll all watch the game together and watch Notre Dame cruise to a victory, and all because of these keys that we are going to talk about today, Brian.
Just real quick, Vince, there's people talking about scores and score predictions. We're doing that on Thursday or Friday. So relax, save those predictions. We'll get to those here after Thanksgiving. So
and bowl predictions are they're all over the place because a lot hinges on this game specifically. So if they win, you go one direction. If they lose, they go another direction. So we'll have some fun with that as well next week after Notre Dame does what they need to do. So we'll have those predictions as well. I've got some ideas of where they might go and where I'd like to see them go, but we'll see.
And also really, so people know, on Saturday as well, we will have our show when the game is over. We'll quickly wrap, end, and then do a post-game show after.
Right.
So, that's what we'll do.
It'll be fun. It's going to be something, like I said, we've never really tried it before. And we will. Somebody said it's going to be rated between PG-13 and rated R. We will keep it family friendly. So everybody, I will do my best to keep it family friendly. But everybody's invited, young and old, So
I'll have the mute button ready for Vince when things don't happen.
If things go south, I might be.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to Vince's audio, everybody. He's talking and yelling and screaming. His face is purple, but I can't hear a word. So.
That would be bad. Very bad.
So Vince, I'm ready to get to these aforementioned keys, man.
Yes.
I'm ready to break this thing down, man.
Let's do a lot of housekeeping, but yes, we are. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the keys to victory, Brian. And of course, you and I, we are offensive coaches, so we always start with the offense first. So our keys to victory for Notre Dame's offense versus USC's defense. Brian, I'll let you kind of kick things off here a little bit, and we'll kind of just go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, first we'll just kind of talk big picture, Vince, about this particular matchup. I mean, I think this is such an important key to this game. Obviously, you're going to talk about, the defense has got to stop the offense and all that. Notre Dame's offense is really, to me, going to determine whether or not Notre Dame can win this game on Saturday.
No doubt.
Because the defense could play great, hold Caleb Williams to 27 points and lose.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like the Oregon State game where they held him to 17 points, that was an anomaly. That's not really the recipe to beating them. That was on the road. It's just one of those days where you just kind of did what you needed to do. Notre Dame's a little banged up on defense, right? So you're going to have to protect them. Look, the defense has been carrying this team all year. Again, this is one of those games where the defense needs the offense to, hey, we need you to have our back in this game, and we're going to find out if the offense is capable of doing it. I mean, the offense did what it needed to do against Clemson and all that, but look, the Notre Dame defense didn't give up a touchdown until like the game was over. I mean, it was already 21-0 by the time Clemson finally got on the board. So that was more, and one of those touchdowns that they had was an 11-yard drive. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where the defense could play really, really well and still give up close to 30 points in this game. Notre Dame's offense is going to have to do their job. They're going to have to carry their weight. And it doesn't mean controlling the clock, because you can control the clock and not have a lot of points.
Right.
It means moving the football and scoring touchdowns. If that means it's a 15-play, 75-yard drive, great. If it's a 3-play, 75-yard drive, great. You need points.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big key. And those will be where a lot of what our specific keys to victory will come from.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I have a lot of faith in what the defense is going to be able to do, but USC's offense is going to score. I mean, they're going to score. So anybody that is going in thinking that, Notre Dame's got a shot at pitching a shootout and all those different things, welcome to the Big 12/Pac-12, right? You're not going to pitch a shutout. That shouldn't be your goal, right? So a lot of this is going to hinge on the offense. The offense, like you said, I love that. It's not necessarily controlling the clock, it's scoring. And Notre Dame is coming off a game where they scored on their first 8 possessions.
Sure.
If they do something similar to that, then I have a lot of faith that Notre Dame is going to be able to have a lot of success in this game, right? But they need to score. They cannot have empty possessions. And to be honest with you, even if they're scoring field goals, they're scoring. Obviously, you don't want all field goals. I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying. They had 5 touchdowns and 3 field goals in the last game, and it was fine. You just need to score. You need to score, right? Because that takes some air out of the balloon. It puts more pressure on the USC offense that they need to score as well. So, this whole thing hinges on the offense, in my opinion. The whole thing.
Right. So let's go key number 1, Vince. I mean, look, we know what that's going to be. Anyone who watches this show, and Vince does watch this show when he's not on it, that everyone knows what key number 1 is. And it's always the same key, and it's for different reasons every time. This week, it's the same one. You got to start fast. And it's similar to where we were at Clemson. It's similar to Ohio State. It's similar to a lot of the games where you're playing high potent offenses early. North Carolina, you've got to start fast by either one of 2 things is going to happen. Your defense is struggling to get up to the game speed, especially after the last 2 weeks where you've played 2 teams that BC's not good. They're not a tempo team. They're a pro style. They don't run a lot of plays either. The week before that, you were playing Navy, who is a ball control, triple option team. Right. It's been a minute since you've seen an offense like this, right? Now, Notre Dame has done really well in the past against this type of offense, but it's been a minute since you've seen this. So there's a chance the defense could come out and take a while to get up to the speed of the game, especially if there's some guys out or some guys banged up or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I'm tell you what, man, this is driving me nuts.
Don't people know we're on the show right
Seriously.
now? Seriously. They know we're live?
Yeah, and I got to turn my phone off. It's never been an issue until like this last week and a half. So, you talk about starting fast, Vince. If the defense is struggling early, you've got to match points. Yes, absolutely. Reminds me a lot of the 2020 North Carolina game. If you remember, everybody talks about how great the defense was that game. And they held Carolina to 17 points and didn't let them get to 300 yards and all that kind of stuff. That's not how that game started. That game started with North Carolina going right down the field and scoring twice.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's offense the first time did not get points. If you remember, Ian Book took a sack, but then after that, Ian Book in the run game went right down the field, and they were able to match those points. The defense finally settled in, was able to start making stops, and then the offense was able to then, give them a lead. That's key number one, right? The other flip side is the USC offense has trouble against the Notre Dame defense because they haven't faced a team this well coached defensively in a while. They haven't faced a team with this kind of speed on defense in a while. They haven't faced a team with this kind of physicality on defense in a while. And that's just this good on defense. The Pac-12 is not good on defense. And the only two really good defenses, in my opinion, Vince, and you may disagree with this, the only two good defenses in the Pac-12 for me is Oregon and Oregon State. That's it. I don't think there's any other good defenses in the Pac-12. And some people point to Utah. I don't think Utah's that good on defense. I really don't. And I've been saying this all year.
Physical, but that doesn't make them a good
Not
defense.
really anymore, though. I don't think. I don't think anyway.
I haven't watched a lot of Utah this year.
They used to be, Vince. They used to be like that. They used to be really good on defense. They used to be really physical and big and all that. Right. And I just don't think this version of Utah is. I think they beat up on teams that are not very good. They gave up 29 to Florida, which is a lot for Florida. They moved the ball on. They held Southern Utah to 7, San Diego State to 7. They're not very good. They held Arizona State to 13, Oregon State to 16. That was a good performance. 17 to Washington State. They're not a great offense. Arizona had 20, Stanford had 17. And then they did a good job against Oregon last week. But I thought that was more about Oregon making mistakes. Yeah. They gave up 42 to UCLA, and they gave up 42 to USC. Really the only two of the only three great offenses they played this year, right? But to me, it's Oregon and Oregon State. And when I look at USC and I look at what kind of they did is they just haven't faced a defense like this. So let's say Notre Dame comes out and plays well early, right? Because those are the two options. I already laid the scenario for if Notre Dame struggles to stop USC. The second scenario is if USC struggles with the speed of Notre Dame. What you have to do if you're the Irish offense is you've got to put some distance early. If your defense is getting stops early, you've got to put that ball in the end zone and get some distance because you're not going to keep USC down for 60 minutes. Yeah. Right. And with all due respect to that North Carolina 2020 team, Sam Howell's not Caleb Williams. Right. Those received De'Ami Brown is not Jordan Addison and Mario, this Mario Williams and Brendan Rice. I mean, it's a better team and it's a better offensive line. So to me, if you are going to start, if your defense does start fast, you got to put separation and put USC on their heels, put them in catch-up mode. So it's going to be a key, Vince, is you've got to start fast, quiet the crowd, get your crowd fired up because we always know there's a lot of Notre Dame fans to this game. Don't let the USC front runners get excited into this game. And then the other thing, too, is USC has not been hit in the mouth a lot. Right. I mean, just like even UCLA, everybody talk about UCLA is a really physical football team. To a degree, they are. But if you watch UCLA, there are a lot of outside zone, buck sweep, that there are a lot of outs. I mean, they're physical, they do like a lot of, fast swipe and wide stuff. They're not a 12 personnel run it right down your freaking throat kind of offense, right? They're not that. They're physical, but there's that. And then there's what Notre Dame does, which is just a different brand of football. So you've got to come out and get a fast start because if you come out and hit USC in the mouth, but then they make a stop, they're going to be like, hey, we got this. It hurts a little, but we're good. But if you come out and hit them in the mouth and then just start just right down the field, bam, 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 all of a sudden doubt starts to step in, starts to seep in. And I think that's very important for Notre Dame. And Joel Klatt made an interesting comment on his show. And I don't know if I fully agree with him on this, but he said, if USC wins, it'll be close. If Notre Dame wins, it'll be a blowout.
Interesting.
And I understand where he's kind of coming from because USC hasn't played this kind of team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing for USC because you could argue that it's been a while since Notre Dame's played this kind of team as well.
Sure.
Because Clemson's not this kind of offense anymore. They used to be, but they're not now. Right? So with all due respect
the closest thing is North Carolina. That
Notre Dame has faced. Yes, recently. And then before that, obviously, Ohio State. Right. But the most recent is what Vince is referring to.
Yep.
Clemson is not that kind of offense anymore. They're just not. They don't have the receiver talent. They don't have the quarterback.
They don't have the quarterback either. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got to start fast offensively and create some doubt on that USC defense and really get them out of sync. And that means great game plan early from Tommy Rees is a must. Mm-hmm. He's got to figure out ways to get different players into the game, and he's got to come out early and get USC on their heels. We'll get specifics of how that is, but the game plan is going to be key. And then, of course, the players coming out and executing. But the game plan is going to be key.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's not just going to come out and line up and say, hey, we're going to run it down your throat. You're going to have to make, you're going to have to do some stuff schematically to give yourself, put yourself in position to be successful.
But you can't, if we're talking about the game plan, we're talking about the big picture, right? You cannot come out with a game plan of we need to milk the clock. You can't do that. You have to take advantage of any perceived mismatches that you have on offense to their defense. You have to. And if, like you said, if that means it's a 3-play, 75-yard drive, so be it. Put those points on the board, man. Like, you can't think, okay, man, we need to run 3 plays to get a first down. We need to run the ball. We need to use all the clock. We need to huddle until there's 5 seconds, rush to the line. Is there a place for that? Is there a time and a place for that? Sure. It's not at the beginning of the game, in my opinion. It's not. You need to go out and you need to be, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but don't be in clock management mode right off the bat. That's not what I want to see from Notre Dame. Now, if you're just running it right down their throat and there's nothing that they're doing that's stopping it, then okay. That is a mismatch and you're utilizing that mismatch. That's fine. But I don't want to see them in the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, punting it away and not scoring. That's where I'm at with this.
I knew I was muted, but I have a habit of talking over people while they're going. So I just kind of, when I'm saying sure, yeah, it just forces me to like, okay, let them finish. I am trying to work on that.
I love it. Okay.
Let me push back a little bit on that, Vince, from the standpoint of you hit the second part of what you said, 100% agree with. The first part, I didn't. So like if your point is more the 3 yards in a cloud of dust and punt, 100% agree. And I thought that's what they were trying to do against Ohio State, right? Just run the clock. And if you don't get points, you don't get points.
Right.
Where I think I think this team is now is they can huddle, do what they need to do, and run some clock out because it's more of a part of who they are now, right? You get what I mean?
Sure.
Now, if your goal is to milk the clock, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
But I think the byproduct of who Notre Dame is can lead to that.
And that's fine.
And it's right, exactly. So that's a somewhat nuance. I think the second part of what you said, I feel like is more true to what you mean, which is this isn't a run the clock down game. This is be who you are, get down the field and score. And if that means you take 8 minutes off on a 15 play drive,
awesome.
Word.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But it's also about creating big play opportunities if they're there and being efficient. So I think that's where I would say is if their first drive come out and they take 6 minutes off the clock and punch it in the end zone, cool.
Yep.
Right? Because I think the Clemson game plan was kind of that, right? Like they came out, they were huddling, they'd quickly line up late in the thing, quickly get shifts in motion, so that way Clemson couldn't figure out what they were doing, and they were able to gash them with it. I think that's a similar philosophy. Now, different scheme, different concepts to attack a different type of defense, but I think that a similar thing there could be good against a defense that takes a lot of risks, likes to move around, likes to play a lot of games, all those type of things. That's why I do think kind of lining up late. So as long as you know what you're doing and you're not doing the scan stuff, you're lining up. This is what we're calling. Bam, let's go. Boom. Then I can dig that.
I will say that to sum up everything that I said, I want him to be creative. Obviously, I want him to come out and I want him to go against tendency and I want him to do all those things that we've seen, right? Of course. But this game and these drives for me are 100% results driven.
Right.
I don't really care how you get there as long as you're crossing the goal line. That's what I care about. You need to score to keep pressure on USC's offense because I don't think that they've been in some shootouts and they've had some different, games where obviously they lost to Utah. They've been in some games where they're not the most comfortable at times, right? But you got to make them uncomfortable right away, in my opinion. Make this team uncomfortable right away. You need to dictate that from a full game perspective. And I think the way you do that is with your perceived weakness for this team, which is the offensive side of the ball. If you can go out and you go down and score, you put some pressure on that offense, that only puts your defense in a better spot. It's the complementary football piece of it for me.
So let's get into some specifics of what this looks like, what starting fast looks like, and then finishing looks like. And those are sort of the next keys, Vince. And the first one is sometimes we try to get nuanced and think outside the box with some of these keys. But in this game, and this is a segue from what you just said, Vince, you're going to win this game because you play Notre Dame football.
Right. Absolutely.
Simple as that.
You have to be who you are.
This isn't Ohio State,
Absolutely.
right? With all due respect to USC, they're not Ohio State, right? They're closer to North Carolina offensively than they are Ohio State at this point in time. Now, eventually they're going to be more like Ohio State. The longer Lincoln Riley stays, they're going to get there, especially if he actually chooses to actually start recruiting high school players at some point in time.
It'll be different.
So when I look at it, Vince, it's you got to play Notre Dame football. And that means you got to come out and you got to run the ball on them effectively. Now, what does that mean? It means, to me, at times mixing up your personnel. But with the way that USC pressures, this is a game to me where 12 personnel, 21 personnel, 22 personnel are things you can really have some success with. And if you want to go 13, fine. But it depends on the scenario and how you use it. I'm okay with 13 in certain looks because you want to create a wider surface at times for this run, for this defense, because they do so much twisting and stunting and so much of the inside pressures and the different things that they do.
Make them
you want to create a wider surface on certain edges, which then allows you more gaps to run through and then more opportunities where if you can catch them on sort of an inside stunt. This is what they did to Clemson. There was times where Clemson would bring those inside pressures, you seal that edge, and they're running duo and bouncing that sucker outside for 15, 20-yard gains.
Right.
Because they created those extra surfaces. Now, it needs to look a little different than it did against Clemson, but it's going to be very similar in what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. Right now, at times you need to spread them out and do some things that way. Because then you can create some gash plays as well. That also means, to me, Vince, figuring out ways to get the ball outside. And I think one of the mistakes one of the things where UCLA wasn't quite as effective as they normally are against USC is because, again, they were like the whole first half, they're trying to run outside the whole time. It's like that kind of plays into USC's hands a little bit because you're trying to pin and pull and they're trying to quickly penetrate and pressure and you're giving up movement.
Yeah.
This is one of those games where I think duo can really have some success because you're not turning your shoulders and doing all those things and opening up run lanes. You're just bam, bam,
go.
And I think that's where, and again, duo, inside zone, counter, those type of things could be huge against Notre Dame. But you also have to be willing to say, we're going to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
The toss play. I remember Chip Long in 2018. And again, it's a different coordinator, but it's a similar philosophy. In 2018, Clemson basically, or USC was going to say, hey, we're not afraid of their pass game killing us. We're worried about their offensive line and run game killing us in 2018, right? So USC early in that game was flying downhill. I mean, the guard stepped right, they flew right. If the guard stepped left, they flew left. And so USC comes out, they get a fast start on Notre Dame. They go up 10-0. Notre Dame's trying to come back. And we've talked about this play before, but they figured out that USC is keying the guards. And whatever direction they're going, they're flying towards it. So Chip Long called a play where he faked buck sweep to the right. Both guards pulled, and USC flew to it. You know what they ran? They just ran a simple sweep play to Dexter Williams to the left. You had one tight end out there. Cole Kmet makes his block. It's a touchdown, and he does. And Dexter Williams goes 50-plus yards because you got to jerk with their eyes a little bit, right? And so if you can mix up some of that stuff a little bit, a few jet sweeps, counter, a reverse, outside zone, a toss, something like that. You ran toss last week. Okay, run toss and then and then hand it off to Chris Tyree going back the other way on 21 personnel. Something like that. Yeah, there may be some risk to it, but if you hit it, USC is in trouble.
Yeah, it's going to be big.
So if you can figure out some ways where, hey, we know they really crash the edge hard on this look, or they don't, or whatever you think it works best, you got to have those tendencies down and be able to attack it. Because yes, you're going to be a duo. I hope they're a duo inside zone team, because when they mix up duo and inside zone like they did against BC, like they did against Clemson, this team is really hard to stop running the football.
Right.
When they get duo dominant, then in duo heavy, that's what we on our breakdown on Sunday night, Vince. It's like coming out running counter the first play of the game out of a look that's a very heavy duo look was huge.
It's brilliant,
right? And then
it just was
later you go inside zone out of a heavy duo look, and with the motions and all that, you're like, dude, he had them off on their heels.
Yeah.
And you need to figure out ways to do similar things against USC. Now, specific to what USC does, it's not regurgitating the BC game plan. I don't want to see that because we've seen them do that before. Hey, it worked last week. Let's regurgitate it again. I don't want to see that, but I do want to see the mix up of the duo, the inside zone, the counters, but you've got to have some stuff outside. So I felt like UCLA tried to work outside in with their run game. Notre Dame needs to work inside out. I think that's the more effective way to run the football on USC. And so, but that's going to be a key, Vince. They've got to run the football effectively, because if you can punch them in the mouth and really set the tone early, you're going to have some success. Get them thinking like, boy, we got to really heat them up if we're going to have a shot, because then that's when you're going to have some things that we'll get to here in a little bit that could really be big. But if you can't establish the run game and figure out ways to just gash them with the run, Vince, it's going to be a long day for Notre Dame.
Well, and we've seen what happens to a USC team. Now, granted, it was a different USC team, but we see what happens to USC teams when you just run the ball and you punch them in the mouth and you get physical with them over and over. And it's not just USC. It's kind of a West Coast thing overall. They don't play physical smash mouth in your face football. That's who Notre Dame is, right? And that would be, if Marcus Freeman called me up one day and he was like, "Hey, what's your advice, man? Be you. Like, be what got you here. Be you, man. Like, just go and run the football, punch them in the mouth, make them quit, man. Make those guys not want to get double teamed up front again." You know what I mean? Like, that's what you need to do. So you need to come out with that mentality. You need to take that mentality that you've had, and it needs to go cross country. After your big Thanksgiving meal tomorrow, it needs to travel. You've got, the next step for this team is for that mentality, that punch you in the mouth mentality, to travel with you 3 time zones, right? And a lot of eyeballs are going to be on this game. And people who have not seen Notre Dame, granted, they did it against Clemson at home, but people aren't looking at USC the way they look at Clemson. It's a different thing right now. People are saying USC is going to be in the Final Four, right? After they take care of business against Notre Dame. They're not saying that about Clemson. So Notre Dame has a big opportunity here. If they can go and they can take this mentality and just punch them in the mouth, that's huge. It's huge.
Clemson fans, there's a lot of pro Notre Dame fans out there this week. Oh, yeah. Right? LSU fans are rooting for Notre Dame if they're not idiots.
Brian Kelly's rooting for Notre Dame.
Which is kind of, okay, that's a question mark, because a lot of the ones we've experienced are. Clemson fans are definitely rooting for Notre Dame, because if you're those teams, you're like, man, if Notre Dame's got to come out and blow this team out, right? Like, they've got to blow, because if they blow out USC, and I'm not predicting that at all. I'm just making a point.
For sure.
And I didn't predict that they would blow Clemson out either, just like I didn't predict that they'd only beat Navy by 3. I mean, that's what I love about football. You just never know, right?
Right.
But if they do, hypothetically, where it's a convincing 17-point win, 42-24, something like that, that's what that'd be. That's 18. If it's 41-24, 17, 38-17, something like that, right? Yeah. Where it's just a convincing, wow, Notre Dame was clearly the better team. Then all of a sudden, Clemson can be like, see, they are really good. Yeah. Let's not forget that this was the preseason number 5 team in the country for a reason.
Right.
So that's kind of what those teams are going to be looking at. But the only way Notre Dame's going to be able to back that up and do that is if they play their game. That's the key. And what their game is, come out, hit them in the mouth, keep them guessing, get them on their heels with your physicality, get them on the heels with your movement, get them on the heels with your various personnel groupings. Don't just be 12-13 the entire flipping game.
Right. Understand
how good 21 personnel is to what you do. And I think if you can get USC kind of going like this while you're also going like this, it's going to be huge, man. And so I'm excited to see if they're able to do it. And I mean, they've done it 6 of the last 8 games. You got to hope that they can do it one more time. And then you get a rest for a month or so until you got to play again. But, and that's the other thing is USC's got a game next week.
Right.
They got another game next week.
And honestly,
this is it for Notre Dame.
They want to win a Pac-12 championship, right? And they're already in the Pac-12 championship. Right. So, now I don't think they're going to be looking past Notre Dame because they win.
You know why, Vince?
There's other things for them.
Because of the playoff.
Right.
That's why they're not overlooking Notre Dame.
Exactly.
Like if they were a 2-loss team, let's say they'd have lost early in the season to Stanford and all of a sudden, but they're still clinched. They've already got all the tiebreakers. They're still in the playoff, right? Which they would be actually. I mean, I believe because I think every team in the league would have 2 losses. Let's just say hypothetically that they're in. Okay.
Right.
With another loss, and they're not in the playoff hunt. maybe you could be thinking that they might overlook a Notre Dame a little bit.
Sure.
Even then, I don't know if I'd buy it because it's the rivalry aspect. But here's where the transfer. But that's what I was going to say. Here's the transfer thing doesn't matter. Like, how many of these kids are really like? Did Jordan Addison come here because he just can't wait to play in the Notre Dame? US. No, he came here because he thinks being here is going to help. He's going to get NIL money and it's going to boost his draft stock. Like, well, dude, I hate to break it to you, but the numbers you put up at Pitt last year were way freaking better than what you're doing at USC this year. That's true. But it is what it is. But they're not invested in that part of it. It doesn't mean they don't want to win. It just means that they haven't experienced the rivalry before. And so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying, well, they don't care about winning. If they didn't care about winning, they wouldn't be 10-1 right now.
Right.
I'm saying, like, it's not about like coming to Notre Dame, or they were recruited by Notre Dame and USC and they liked both schools and they're both in the top 5, but they picked USC and they've been in this rivalry and they remember what happened to them last year against Notre Dame. And there's a lot of dudes that aren't that way. You know what I mean? Where it's like, okay, sure.
They're kind of another game done at USC. Yeah. I mean, it is
right.
It is what it is.
So that's something Notre Dame's got to kind of take advantage of that. There is no tomorrow for you. This is it. Leave it all out there. You're banged up. I need you to get through one more game.
Yep.
Because you're going to get a month off, right? We're leaving it all out there this Saturday. And that goes for coaches too, Vince.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to number 3. In a game like this, your stars have to be stars, but to win these games, your complementary players need to step up, Vince. Yeah. And yes, you need Michael Mayer to be Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
You need your running backs to do what they do. You need Logan to go off. You need Audric to go off. You need your stud tackles to play like studs. You need Jarrett Patterson to, hey, buddy, we're going back out west to your old stomping grounds. Let's get your last career game at home. Maybe the last career game for Jarrett Patterson, Michael Mayer. Who knows? Right? I mean, this definitely could be possible. Their last game, especially for Michael Mayer. Leave it all out there, man. But in a game like this, the difference a lot of times can be who your complementary players are.
Absolutely.
And, I think of like the 2015 game, for example, Vince, when Notre Dame and USC played in 2015. And yes, Will Fuller goes off, makes a big play, early in the game. CJ Prosise goes off. But then you had like EQ blocking a punt for a touchdown, right? You had Amir Carlisle had some clutch plays in that game. Josh Adams comes off the bench, rips off a 26-yard run, to help set up a touch, to get him inside the 10 and set up a touchdown. You had some of your complementary players stepped up in that game as well. When you think about that 2015 game, when you think of the 2019 game, who were your stars for you in the 2019 game when you beat USC? I mean, Chase had a nice game against them, 3 catches for 47 yards. Cole Kmet had a nice game, 6 catches for 61 yards. But the star of that game was 2 dudes. Tony Jones Jr. just goes off in that game, 176 yards. And then this cat named Braden Lindsey, who hadn't really done a whole lot that year, comes off and rips off a 51-yard reverse for a touchdown, right? So it's in a game like this that your complementary players, 2018 out at USC, they're doing everything they can to take Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin out of the game. Everything they can. So who steps up and dominates in the first half? Chris Fink gets 100 yards in the first half. Like, who predicted that going into that game? All right. So to win a game like this, Vince, it can't just be your stars playing like stars. You also need to get your complementary guys to step up and have a role. Now, 2 things. Number 1, you've got to give them opportunities as coaches to make those plays.
Yep.
And number 2, when those opportunities come, because it may just be like a throw. Braden Lindsey may get 1 touch. He only got 2 touches in that game in 2019. But one of them went for 51-yard touchdown. He may only get 2 touches again this game, but he's got to make them count. Mitchell Evans may only get 1 target in this game, but make it count. And I know that there's a complimentary player for you that you think needs to be a big part of the game plan and could be and somebody just put it in the chat too, Vince. He's right online with you. I know there's a player in your head, Vince, that you're like, if you use him properly, this is how you go out there and roll this game to complement your dude. Because the dudes are Audric and Logan. We all know that.
Absolutely.
Whether you think they should or shouldn't, doesn't matter. They are.
That's what this season has been, right? Those are the 2 dudes, and the complementary back that Notre Dame has right now is Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree is still going to be one of, if not the fastest guy on the field whenever he steps on. He is
the fastest guy on the field.
Yes. So you need to utilize him properly, whether that's in 21 personnel, whether it's in 31 personnel that we saw a little bit of last week. Look, USC is not even going to their minds are going to explode when 3 running backs who are all playmakers get on the field at the same time, right? That's when you need to utilize Chris Tyree. You got to get him moving. You got to put him in the slot. You got to put him in the backfield. You got to put him in motion. You've got to utilize Chris Tyree. And God forbid if they happen to kick the ball to him in a kickoff. I mean, I'm hoping that they give him an opportunity because I could see him doing something special in the return game too. But Chris Tyree is a huge X factor for me in this game because at the beginning of the year, we were begging for him to be used properly. They kind of did it there in the middle, and then he fell off again.
And
it worked, and it kind of fell off. And now they kind of brought him back, and they're starting to use him again. You have to utilize your weapons.
We did it against Clemson and BC, to your point, Vince.
Yes.
I mean, Clemson getting him outside with the little now screens and things like that, the little swings. Bingo.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. You have to get him involved because he is a mismatch nightmare on whoever lines up across from him. He's going to win that matchup. So whether it's a reverse, whether it's a jet, whether it is a wheel, whatever the case may be, you need to get 25 involved in the game plan. 7 and 3, they're going to get their touches. They're going to be great. 100%. They're going to do their thing.
And we already talked about them in point 2, whether we said their names or not. The run game doesn't thrive if Audric and Logan aren't going off.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you're not rushing for 250 yards on USC without Logan and Audric going off. That's a given. Those guys are givens. You need them to do their thing.
Yep.
But it's about that complement and we saw this against Clemson. Once they started putting Tyree in the game, he had the little swing pass, he had the little now screen, and all of a sudden when he was out there, Clemson was like, we got to pay attention to that dude a little bit. And all of a sudden you're running inside zone and duo right inside of him and you're gashing them.
Exactly.
Right? And running some RPOs with him, or if they want to still crowd the box and you're pulling that sucker, getting out and throwing in Michael Mayer's lead blocking form, or Mitchell Evans' lead blocking form, depending on your personnel group. So it's about using him to then open up more room for Logan and Audric as well. And you're using his speed to make plays. It's both.
Yep.
It's got to be both. And that's going to be the key for me in this game, Vince. And I think you nailed it with that. Because we were talking like, I'm like complementary players, and Vince is like Chris Tyree. It's Chris, you know what I mean? But it's him, it's Mitchell Evans, it's Jaden Thomas, it's Braden Lindsey.
You name a wide receiver, they're a complementary piece in this offense. I mean, they just
Deion Colsey, Tobias Merriweather, like those guys have to step up and make plays when they're given a chance. And it may only be one throw. And, Deion Colsey got one throw last week. That's it.
Huge third down.
Made him count. He got 2 targets against Navy. Made him count.
Yeah.
Tobias Merriweather got 2 targets against Stanford. Made him count. Right? I mean, that's going to be the key. And then schematically, using those guys as, okay, we know they're going to target Mayer here. Let's do this with Mayer and Diggs or Audric to then open up something for somebody else. That's going to be a key.
Yes, no question
That's
about
it.
No question. You had we always talk about stars being stars. That's absolutely accurate, and they're going to have to be. But you also have to use your stars to get the complementary pieces, those touches, and getting those guys involved. You have to,
because there's two risks. There's 2 dangers for a game plan. One is you're so dependent on your stars that if they get shut down, you've got nothing to go to. Right? That's danger number 1. Danger number 2 is you overly decoy them. You know what I mean? Where you're using them a little too much. Like, okay, I get the decoy stuff, but you got to still get your dude the ball.
Absolutely.
It's that happy medium of, yes, Michael Mayer is going to be the focal point of this game plan. So is Audric Estime. So is Logan Diggs. But as part of that, there are going to be times where we get them thinking that this is coming, but we're coming with this to create a big play.
Mm-hmm.
And those are or a key third down conversion, right? Like we may not hear Jaden Thomas's name mentioned but twice in this game, but it's a 3rd and 5 conversion and 3rd and 6 conversion, and that's it. Well, that's going to be key. That's going to be important, and those are going to be the things that we say. We may only hear Mitchell Evans' name once, but it's he got that great seal block, because it's not just pass game.
Right. He needs
that great seal block on the edge where Logan bounces it out because he blocks Tooley on the edge. All of a sudden, Logan can bounce it and go for that big play. Or Jaden Thomas gets that great downfield block because he's been blocking his butt off in the second half. Remember how critical we were of him back in early in the season for his blocking? Because it was like, dude, does he even want to be out there?
Right.
Now you look at him now and you watch him the last month in the run game, and it's like you almost kind of feel like he gets happier. He doesn't. No receiver does. but the way he plays, he's happier when they call a run play because he's like, okay, yeah. That's not what's going through his head. It's just, but that's what they're asking him to do. Marcus Freeman said this, like whether it's blocking or catching or whatever, we're asking these guys to take pride in everything that they do and understand how important it is. And Jaden has embraced that. And his downfield blocking's been really good, so whether it's him blocking a corner in the end zone and Chris Tyree cuts in front of him for a big play, Mitchell Evans sealing the outside, Holden Stace getting open on a 3rd and 5 for a big play. I mean, all those things are going to just one play here, one play there, 2 plays here, 2 plays there from your complementary players. And all of a sudden, USC has no answers.
It has to be a team win. I mean, it has to be team success for this.
Yep, absolutely. Number 4. At the end of the day, a lot of this stuff doesn't work if Drew Pine doesn't play well. And look, I don't need Drew Pine to play like he did against North Carolina in this game. If he does, it's a rout. I mean, it's it's
agreed.
Over. Agreed. Right? I mean, if he comes out and completes, what was he? I'm just going to pull this up real quick. His numbers were just absurd in that game. I think he was like 71%, and he had 71% with a couple drops, if I remember correctly. But he goes 24 of 34 for 289 yards, or even if he plays like he did against BYU, 22 of 28 for 262. If he plays like that, it's a wrap. I mean, it's a wrap. I mean, USC has no chance. I'm not predicting that or anticipating that or saying he has to play that way for them to win. What he needs to be is sort of a middle of the road between BC and Navy.
First half Navy. Yeah.
So first half Navy, first quarter BC.
Yeah.
Right. Like he goes 9 of 12 for 111 yards in the first quarter against BC. And that success, backs BC off, right? We need to see that Drew Pine hit the backs when they're open. Go through your progressions. Don't be afraid to take a check down. It's okay to take a check down and if those guys are wide open, check it down. Let Audric run over some cornerback, right? It's just play within the system, right? That's the key. I think sometimes Drew tries to force stuff like I got to go make a play here. No, you don't. You don't need to force that great out throw to Mayer. Just get the ball in the check down, right? Like just take your opportunities are there. And then he'll get a couple chances on the perimeter to make a play, and that's fine. Make those, like the sprint out, the roll out to Colsey. Those are all great. But those aren't as effective, Vince, if you're also not taking the check down on 3rd and 10 and letting them go. If you're not being consistent, keeping your depth in the pocket, don't rush. Don't lock in on guys. Go take what their defense is going to give you. If he can be kind of that guy, first half Navy, first quarter BC for 4 quarters, then Notre Dame will win. I really believe that. And it's not asking that's not world beater stuff. That's just USC is going to play single man coverage. They did it against UCLA, and they basically said, your receivers are going to have to beat us. Well, if they did that to UCLA, they're definitely going to do that to Notre Dame because Notre Dame doesn't have a Jake Bobo, running around a receiver. Now, you could argue that Jake Bobo is their Michael Mayer, and that'd be a fair thing to say, for how UCLA does it, but they're not going to respect Notre Dame's receivers at all, nor should they really. I mean, if you're talking
what
about
gives you the reason to,
what you got to do to stop Notre Dame. So in that instance, Vince, Drew's got to take, if you see Braden Lindsey one-on-one and that guy's, playing off coverage, especially, buddy, just hit your drop and let her rip. I mean, that's really it. Take that little 5-yard outcut of that 5-yard hitch when they're playing bail coverage or off coverage, because their safeties are going to be thinking run game, 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 run game. And if Tommy's going to scheme some stuff up, I think, to take advantage of that, Drew's got to hit it. That's the key. Drew's got to hit it. And if he can, then this offense is going to roll. I believe that. If he doesn't, then they're going to sputter and they're going to struggle. Vince.
I agree with everything that you just said. And just to put a finer point on his play. But I just want to add something. I want to add as an addition to, look, USC has 18 interceptions on the year, right? They're good at getting interceptions. He can't be careless with the football.
Right.
Look, I still want him to take chances. And that chance may turn into an interception. Okay. It's possible. But you can't be reckless with the football. And I don't, at the chance of sounding like Brian Kelly, I want him to take care of the football. Okay. I need him to take care of the football and not turn it over. Right. Everything you said is accurate. He needs to do all of those things. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. He just needs to be Drew Pine. Just be Drew Pine. Don't be bad Drew Pine. You don't have to be Heisman Drew Pine. Just be Drew Pine. You're going to be fine. You move the football. You lean on the run game, a little play action, all of that. You just can't turn the football over in the air. Can't have the tip passes, right? You can't give the opportunities for USC to ball hawk and get those interceptions, because that's just going to put the defense in a bad spot.
The concern for me, Vince, is him getting in the pocket and then doing that climb stuff, getting the ball tipped, and a linebacker safety comes underneath and picks it off.
Right.
If he gets picked off because on 3rd and 6 at midfield, he takes a shot down the field to Braden Lindsey and it gets picked.
All right. I have no problem. That's as good as a punt.
Sure.
That's
as long as you tackle the guy, sure, it is what it is. What you can't do is you're driving and he rushes a throw and it gets picked in the end zone, or it gets batted down, or even worse, you give them a short, or just as worse, you give them a short field because you're throwing 25, you're rushing, you're panicking, and you get the ball out too quick, or you predict, or that something's going to happen. Instead of reading, you don't predict, you got to read. All those things are going to be keys for Drew Pine. Again, we're not asking him to look like Jimmy Clausen. Just stay within the offense. Get the ball where it needs to go.
Yep.
Manage it. Let your dudes be dudes, because Notre Dame has dudes.
Yes.
That's the thing. Just
use
them. Trust your dudes. Trust Braden Lindsey.
Yes.
Just
get it where it needs to be.
Trust Jaden Thomas. Right.
Yes.
Trust Kersky Reed. Trust Aldrich on a swing route that he's going to catch it and run some dude over. Trust Mitchell Evans. Give him a chance. If Drew's on top of his game, we've seen him be that way. We saw him that way against Carolina. We saw him against BYU. We saw him the first half against USC or BC or Navy. We saw him that way in the first quarter against BC. We have seen it. We're not asking him to do anything we haven't seen him do this year.
Exactly.
Just be that guy for 4 quarters. And if he does that, they're going to win this game, in my opinion.
Yep. Completely agree with you.
Number 5, Vince, is a bit of a big picture thing too, and it's simple. In a game like this, with this magnitude, against an offense like this, the offense has to answer.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to answer. That's going to be a big part of this game. Anything you can do, I can do better. Has got to be the mantra for the Notre Dame offense this week.
Absolutely. No question about that. And people, I said that you need to score on all your drives, and how sometimes field goals are okay. Sometimes field goals are okay, because at least you're matching a score with a score. Okay. Now, you can't match their touchdowns with field goals every time. I'm not an idiot. I know that 7 is more than 3. Okay. But you still need to put the pressure on USC to oh, wow, they just went down and scored after we scored. Okay, we got to go down and score.
Yeah.
You've got to keep that pressure on them.
You can't let them keep gaining on or pulling away from you.
And again, how do you get that field goal? Are you smash mouthing them all the way down the field, and then you kick a field goal, you get some points out of the deal? Did the defense get you a turnover in the red zone and you stalled out and you had to kick a field goal? Not all field goals are the same. Okay.
Right.
I will say that. All right. You need to not give their offense all kinds of confidence that, hey, we're going to score. Our defense is going to get the ball back. We're going to score again. It can't be that way. You have to match a score with a score. Absolutely have to.
Right. Yeah. And I think you nailed a part there, Vince. It's kind of a little different than what I was referring to, but I think is just as important as well. What I was referring to was when they score, you've got to answer.
Right.
I think you nailed a point too, is if the defense gives you a short field, you can't settle for a field goal.
Right.
You got to punch that sucker in, right? And if you go on a 12-play drive where you took 7 minutes off the clock and you got to do a field goal and that was an answer, all right, cool, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that's another one too, is answering when the defense has success. They give you a short field. The special teams blocks a punt. That's got to be 7, baby, right? That's got to be 7. Mm-hmm. And those are going to be big parts of this game. Big parts of this game. So, let's say you go on a 14-play drive and you score and you go up 3-0, and then all of a sudden, like we saw last week, missed opportunity in the red zone, had to settle for field goal. Next drive, defense steps up. Benjamin Morrison gets a big pick. It's got to be 7. And it's got to be 7.
It was.
And it was.
And it was.
And it was. Because now all of a sudden, they're down 2 possessions as opposed to 2 field goals where, okay, fine, 2 field goals.
It's a touchdown.
And that's what hurt Notre Dame against Clemson in the 2020 ACC title game. I mean, Notre Dame came out, their first 3 drives, they moved it into Clemson territory, but they missed a field goal, made a field goal, and I think had a turnover on downs or something. I think is how that's – and next thing you know, Trevor hits 2 plays and you're down. And it's like, man, you've been out playing them for like a quarter and a half, and all of a sudden 2 plays, you're down. Can't be that.
Right.
It's got to be we're up 17-0 because they had some turnovers. And then when Caleb gets hot, which he will.
It's going to happen.
Yes, he will.
It's going to be frustrating, but
then,
it's going to happen.
And and this goes back to the start early thing, start fast thing. These two things kind of tie together because answering is sometimes, to your point, Vince, is when your defense does something well, you're answering and responding with points. If you put distance in between you and USC, which is not easy,
right,
they are a very good comeback team, as we've seen all year. They've been down before. They were down 14-0 against UCLA.
Yep.
And that includes USC having twice on their USC's first 2 drives against UCLA. They went right down the field and were in scoring range. They had a turnover on downs in the red zone. Then they missed a field goal in the red zone. UCLA comes down, scores 2 touchdowns, and you're 14-0. They didn't panic at all. And including one of them was because Caleb threw a terrible pick, which he rarely does. UCLA goes down 14-0. What does UCLA do or USC do? Comes right back down and scores.
Right.
The kid's not going to panic.
No.
But what I do think you can do is if you can put some distance there offensively, you can then adjust your game plan to make sure that they're not getting the quick scores.
Right.
And you can start doing some things and maybe you can take some chances to maybe then force a mistake to where you can really put them away. You can't do that when you're down 14-0.
Right.
And so that's going to be a big key for the offense too.
There will be no lead that is safe, by halftime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, even if Notre Dame takes the 2-3 touchdown lead at halftime, you will not see me like, woohoo! All right, everybody, tune in for the post-game show. It's going to be a good one. Like, USC has the firepower to come back, and they have proven that they can come back. They've proven it, right? So that's the big thing. So, yes, Notre Dame needs to start fast, but they also need to continue and not fall off the table in the second half. That's
answering. That's answering. If you're up, let's say you're up 24-10 at halftime. And boy, you're feeling great about yourselves. USC comes out that first drive of the next half, and they go right down the field and score. It's 24-17. That's what happened against Oklahoma State. Remember, Notre Dame is up 28-7. Oklahoma State goes right down the field and scores 28-14. And Oklahoma State gets the ball to start the second half. They go right down the field and score, and the Notre Dame offense did not answer. If you go back down and score again to make it 35-21, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're good here, right? But they didn't answer that. And it allowed Oklahoma State to come back and score. And that was against an offense not nearly as good as this one.
Right.
So, now again, different team, different coaching staff and all that. The point is the same, though. It's that answer thing.
Yeah.
Vince, let's move over to the defense. I think this is obviously a very intriguing matchup. There's one big – we'll talk about 5 specific things here, but there's one overarching theme of this, and that is a tremendous quarterback on the other side of the field with a lot of talented weapons. You've got to figure out ways to just keep them from just really going off. Understanding that they're going to get theirs at times, but you just like Ohio State got theirs. They hit their big plays.
Sure.
But you cannot let them just kind of go off. And so all of our keys are going to be built around that one premise of you just can't let these dudes take this game over. You just can't.
Yeah, you can't let their stars be stars, frankly, right? Because if they are, it's going to be a very high-scoring game, and Notre Dame's not going to be able to match a high-scoring game, I don't think. I mean, I'm just being realistic here, right? We just got done talking about the offense and what they can do and what we hope they can do and what they need to do. I just don't see a shootout working out in Notre Dame's favor, okay? So you can't allow USC to just throw the ball all over the yard, and you can't allow their run game to be complementary of their pass game and be effective. You have to shut down their dudes, and their biggest and their best dude is Caleb Williams, period. I mean, all 5 of our keys are going to talk basically about containing Caleb Williams, right? I mean, that was my number one key was you have to contain Caleb Williams, and you have to. He is the cog in the machine that is the USC offense. If you can somehow slow him down, you're not going to be able to stop him. You can't. You're not going to be able to stop him. You have to contain him. You can't let him do some of the things that he did against UCLA. I'm sure we all watched the UCLA-USC game because Notre Dame's game was earlier. We were all watching it, right? There were times where he should have been sacked by UCLA. He should have been. And he got out of it. He got outside the pocket. He kept his eyes down the field. And he just, I mean, it's like there's a rocket on his shoulder. And all of a sudden, the ball is there. And it's right on the money. And it's not just a first down, but it's a big play. You cannot allow him to do that. And at the same time, you can't allow him just to sit in the pocket and pick you apart. It's sometimes easier said than done, obviously.
Let's get into the specifics of this one, Vince. I think the first one is, we try to avoid the obvious ones, but sometimes it's like it's just it has to. They have to dominate up front.
Yes,
they have to. Now this is a quality USC offense. I think USC's offensive line being in the Joe Moore Award finalist thing is like that's absurd. Like they're not one of the 9 best offensive lines in college football.
Chance.
But they're much better than they were last year.
They're not Boston College.
Right. They're much better They're much better. They're very sound, right? They're well coached. They're just not super talented. They don't have a Blake Fisher. They don't have a Joe Alt. Right. They don't have a future top 10 NFL draft pick. They're very old, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Very experienced unit, with the exception of number 76, the left tackle, who will rotate in at left tackle. He's a redshirt freshman. Brett Nealon, I think, is a 6th-year guy. Andrew Voorhees, I believe, is a 6th-year guy. Justin Diedrich is a veteran player. So they're going. Jonah Monheim, I think, is a 3rd-year player. So it's a very experienced group, and they're very sound. They're not dominant; they're just sound. Notre Dame has to dominate. You get Jason Adamiola back. This is his last regular season game. This is Justin's last regular season game. This is Isaiah Foskey. This could be Isaiah Foskey's last game in Notre Dame uniform. It may be.
Yeah, you don't know.
Playing out west and in his home state. If they don't, the defensive line has been really good at times. Overwhelming people at times. And then at other times they've been, where are they? Right? This can't be one of those games. Right. If Notre Dame's defensive line doesn't have a day, I don't see Notre Dame winning this game unless the offense just plays out of its mind for Notre Dame.
Right.
I really don't. So that's key number 1, Vince. And what does that mean? It means getting USC out of sync. You're penetrating. You're blowing up the run game. You're not letting them get the run game going. Not letting them be balanced. Having early down success. Getting stops behind the line of scrimmage. Getting stuffs at the line of scrimmage. When they're trying to run their stuff, you're stopping them for 2-yard gains. Getting them behind the sticks. Getting consistent pressure on Caleb Williams, not 3 sacks, because 3 sacks don't necessarily mean anything, but just consistent pressure. And I'm going to tie points 1 and 2 a little bit together for part of this, and then we'll focus more on the other aspects of point 2. But key number 2 is you got to tackle well. And we'll get to what that means for the perimeter players here in a minute.
Sure.
But I'm watching this UCLA game, and it happened against Arizona State, and it happened against a lot of teams, where you got Caleb Williams dead to rights. I mean, just a free runner, and he hit him, and he just bounces off, and he gets out, and he just runs for 15 yards, or he gets a throw off. And Notre Dame has had that problem at times, allowing quarterbacks to do that. When this defense has really been at its best, it's hitting the quarterback, and it's bringing him down. The way to do that is you've got it's numbers, because what was happening against UCLA is he would bounce off one guy, and then there was nobody else there.
Right.
It's got to be one where he avoids Isaiah Foskey, and then, bam, Justin Adamiola is hitting him in the chest, or Riley Mills is right there, or Jason Adamiola is right there. Howard Cross, or Howard Cross is penetrating him.
Right.
He's got to spin out, and he spins out right into Isaiah Foskey.
Right.
It's got to be numbers. You've got to overwhelm him with numbers, because him against any of your D linemen in space is going to be a win for USC. But him against 3 of your dudes in the backfield is a win for Notre Dame, and that's going to be the key. And to the point where we talk about what they did to Drake May early in the game, first drive, they lost. They no pass rush integrity, no pass rush lane integrity. He runs for like 30 some yards on that drive, leads them down the field. They get a touchdown, a fourth down touchdown.
You're like, oh boy.
Exactly. Here we go again, because you just watched Jack Plummer run on him, and you're like, this is going to be ugly.
Here we go. Yeah.
And then after that, they settle down. Great pass rush integrity without losing. Because here's the thing: some teams will lose pass rushing ability to keep contained. If you just let him sit comfortably in the pocket, he will rip you up.
Yes.
Right. Other quarterbacks, we've said, look, keep DJ. We wanted to keep him in the pocket. He can't beat you sitting in the pocket. Right. Emmett Moorhead wasn't going to necessarily beat you sitting in the pocket. This kid can. So you've got to pressure him, get him on his heels, but then also not let him take off because you were too aggressive. That's a hard line to play sometimes, but it's got to be done. So the D-line's got to dominate the run game first, and then that's got to lead to the second part of it, which is consistent pressure on Caleb Williams against an offensive line that doesn't consistently give up a lot of pressure. Now, is that because the Pac-12 defenses aren't good, or are they that good? We're going to find out on Saturday, right?
Well, yeah, and it's also the fact that Caleb Williams gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. I mean,
at times,
you know what I mean? I mean, I'm just saying that helps the offensive line stats because they got a good quarterback they're protecting, right? I mean, he makes their job a little easier at times.
Here's the interesting thing about the USC offense. There's stuff where he's catching and getting it out. That's the RPO stuff, the perimeter screen stuff. But a lot of their vertical passing game takes time to develop.
Sure.
You know, so you look at when UCLA went up, I think it was 7-0. They came out and ran a play, and he was able to kind of slide step. There was nobody there, and then they ran this deep corner route that took time to develop. And he just throws a gorgeous ball because you're not going to cover these kids all day. You're not. And so he was able to get the ball out. What you can't allow to happen is you can't allow them to kind of come out into these kind of situations and say he's going to sit back in the pocket. And they run a lot of downfield stuff. They run a lot of deep in cuts, deep over routes, a lot of things where they'll do a lot of level stuff, right? That takes time to develop. It's those throws that you can't let him have success on, right? And then that leads into point 2, the quick stuff. Right? When you get into point number 2, the quick stuff, you got to tackle. And they did a great job of that on Saturday against Boston College, against Zay Flowers, who to me is every bit as good as anybody that BC has or USC has. Now, the difference is USC has like 3 of him on the field at the same time a lot of times, right? So you've got to tackle in space, got to tackle the running backs in space. You can't teams will just kind of bail cover events in the Pac-12, and then Lincoln Riley says, okay, if you're going to drop 8, I'm just going to come out the next play, have Caleb stare right down the middle of the field, turn right, throw a swing pass to Austin Jones, and there's nobody there. It's the easiest 15 yards you're ever going to get. So there's got to be a level of discipline, but at the same time, Vince, it's got to be a situation where those kids are going to get in space on you with the RPOs and the quick game. You got to bring them down. You got to bring them down. If you don't tackle in space, or if you let Jordan Addison catch a slant route and then he makes 2 guys miss, and next thing you know it's a 30-yard gain, they're going to beat you. Or at least they're going to score a lot. That's another key. So tackling him in the backfield, but then when he does get the ball out, to your point, Vince, on the quick game, the RPOs, the screens, you've got to tackle on space and let a 6-yard catch be a 6-yard gain. Let a 12-yard catch be a 12-yard gain. Let a -2-yard catch be a -2-yard gain. Right. You do that, then you're going to have a shot.
And I will say that Notre Dame in the last 3 games has done a good job on their perimeter tackling. That's one of the things that I think a lot of offensive coordinators have looked at Notre Dame and thought, this is a place where we can take advantage of Notre Dame. Well, in the Clemson game, not so much. Navy, they didn't hurt Notre Dame on the outside. And then last week against Boston College, Notre Dame just dominated in the open field. They have to continue that. They have to. Because USC's got some guys that are good in space.
Yeah, and a lot of dudes.
They have to be able to tackle in space. And to your point, they need to tackle Caleb Williams when they get their hands on him. And I just want to add a little bit to point number 1 about the D-line. They have to be able, look, Golden's going to bring pressure. He's proven that over the last few games. Like that, he's going to bring pressure from all over the place.
Yes, exactly.
He's going to bring pressure, right?
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah, right.
It's going to come.
Fair enough. But there also has to be times where Notre Dame has to be able to get pressure on Williams with 4.
Yeah.
They have to. With the front four has to put pressure on. Right. And whether that's maybe 3 linemen, 1 linebacker, or whatever, you've got to be able to get pressure with 4.
Vince, I know it's been a while, but you know what the mantra is in regards to this.
What's that?
Right. Well, you and I have said this a million times. You need to be able to, in a situation where Golden's blitzing because he wants to, not because he has to.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely. And I like a lot of the pressures that he brings. Sometimes not so much, but most of the time I like that he's bringing some different areas. And there's some guys that are better when they're being triggered, and all of that. We've talked about that a million times, right? But they have to get pressure. And when they do, they have to bring guys down. You have to, period. You can't, if he's bouncing off guys, we're in trouble. Notre Dame is in trouble if Caleb Williams is bouncing off guys. Big time.
And if Jordan Addison and Mario Williams are making people miss in space, 100%.
Yes. Yep, could not agree
more. And that leads into point number 3 too, Vince, is a big key to this is you've got to be disciplined. This is, Ryan asked me a question early, and I didn't realize he and I had this difference of opinion, but he asked me, It's kind of different. You asked me would I rather break down the triple option or break down Mike Leach's offense. And I was like, definitely Mike Leach's offense. And I rather enjoy watching air raid offenses. I'm not an air raid guy myself, but a good air raid offense is fun to watch. And I think, and I said this to him, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. This is my favorite version of the air raid because it's more balanced. It's, they'll run the ball. They care more about being balanced and those type of things. But when I look at it, man, they've got some really interesting scheme. They do some really interesting stuff to scheme people up. They'll run like a buck sweep action away with a screen coming backside, and they do some really intriguing stuff that requires you to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And they're going to do things to jack with your eyes, to jack with your read, to make you think this is coming, but when in reality, they want you to think that's coming. They want you to react to that because they've got something that they want to throw behind you. So you can't give them cheap yards. Make them, Vince, they're going to get yards. They're going to get points. But I think you said it earlier, too, when we were talking about, when we were talking about the offense, I think you said this about their offense because we were kind of how the Notre Dame offense can help their defenses. You've got to make them earn every yard and every point they get.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't give them cheap stuff because if you make them run more plays, eventually you can get them into a mistake. Maybe it's not a turnover because they don't turn a ball over a lot, but it can be incompletions, batted balls, fumbles, tackles for loss where, they're moving. Perfect example. Remember the Oklahoma game in 2012? And nobody thought Notre Dame could stop that offense, right? In the beginning of the game, Oklahoma kind of went right down the field, but it was all, 5 yards, 12 yards, 13, 6, 2, 12. And they had to run a lot of plays. And they started moving. They got into Notre Dame territory, kind of gotten deep. And then what happened? Snap goes over Landry Jones's head. Big loss, drive over. But the reason why that happened is because you say, well, they caught a break. Yeah, they caught a break because they kept making USC or Oklahoma run a ton of plays. And this is pre-Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma, right? This is back in 2012. Right. But the point is, when you're playing an offense like this, the more plays you make them run, the more opportunity there is, Vince, for there to be a mistake, especially a team that throws the ball this much. I think of to go to a former USC quarterback. We're watching the Pitt West Virginia game in the opener, and JT Daniels throws this gorgeous ball, deep in cut, hits his receiver right in the hands, goes flying up in the air. The Pitt kid picks it off and runs it back for a touchdown.
Right.
It's like the quarterback did everything right. They made a mistake, and you made them pay for it. But, so the more plays you run, the more odds that something like that happens. It drops a ball. You make that one, there's all types of things that can happen. So you've got to make them run plays.
Yes.
Run plays. Make them earn every point and every yard. It's going to be key.
No doubt. And like you said, the more opportunities you have to make a mistake, the more chances you have of making a mistake. And Notre Dame can't give up a big play. You can't let them run by you and just give up a bomb. You can't let a short pass turn into a huge gain. I mean, to a degree, and somebody said this in the chat earlier, you have to play the field position game. I mean, that's not wrong. I mean, that there is something to that. And, I kind of have like your special teams has to be special too. And I know there's a chance that we'll get into that a little bit later, but I mean, for once at Notre Dame, we can say that, and that's a legitimate key, right? I mean, we'll get into that in a minute, but you're absolutely right, Brian. You need to make USC earn everything that they get because they're going to score. They're going to get yards. The box score the next day may not be pretty from a defensive standpoint for Notre Dame as long as the score is what Notre Dame wants.
Somebody in the show earlier asked if Notre Dame should implement the plan that Michigan had against Ohio State last year. And the response we had was like, well, I mean, there's certain aspects of it that, philosophically, control the clock and all that. But you just nailed a great point, Vince, because if you look at the box score last year, Ohio State threw for 394 yards. They had 458 yards of total offense. They scored 27 points.
Right.
But Ryan's point was they made Ohio State, like it was not easy yards for Ohio State. And then by making them run a bunch of plays, because they ran 79 plays in that game, and they don't normally run that many. They had 86 the week before against Michigan because Michigan State can't give them the ball back. But they're like 69, 68, 69, 71, 64, 61, 66, 48. And so they were hard-earned numbers.
Right.
And so they got their 27, but it was an inefficient 27. And their yards per play in that game was 5.8. Well, the 2 games before they were 9, 7, and 6. And then in the Rose Bowl against Utah, they were 10.2. Right? I mean, so make them earn it.
Exactly.
Make them earn those yards.
Yep.
And if you do that, then you have a chance to keep the points down enough to give your own offense a chance to go make a play.
Yep.
And that's where discipline comes from. That was the whole point, is be disciplined. Don't give them cheap scores.
Absolutely.
Don't give them the 25-yard gain because you got out-leveraged or because you hit the wrong gap fit or you didn't have your coverage correct or you didn't communicate correctly or you missed a tackle or, you keyed too hard on something. Play within the system. And then when you get a chance to make a play, make a play. That's going to be the key.
Yep.
That's going to be the key. Point number 4, Vince, is protect the edges. This kind of ties in a little bit to the tackling thing, but also bigger picture schematically. You want to funnel everything back inside of the middle, and that's going to be a key. Even the pass game to a degree. USC likes to throw the ball over the middle, but if you can get into a situation where you're not letting them really do well getting those bubble screens outside and the now screens like outside the pocket, where the tunnel screens where they like to throw wide and they cut inside, but they like to cut inside and then get back outside.
Right. Immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is you need to funnel everything back inside. When they're trying to run off the edge, you got to set the edge hard and funnel that thing back into your linebackers. When they're trying to run screens, you got to funnel them suckers back into your linebackers and your safeties. When they're trying to throw the ball outside, don't let them hit those plays outside. Make them throw it over the middle because that's where you can get your own tipped balls and things like that. And a lot of their inside routes over the middle take more time to develop, right? It's the outside quick hitters that can cause you problems. The stuff where you're going to throw over top of people, or he hits his drop and he bangs that corner out of that out cut over top of somebody. Make him throw the lower percentage passes, the longer time consuming routes. But you only do that because you've taken away the edge, the quick edge stuff, where he's got to now read down the field because then that gives your pass rush a chance,
right,
to make an impact on the game. But if he's able to come out there and that RPO game is rolling, it's going to be a long day for Notre Dame.
Yeah, no doubt. And I will say, if you would have asked me this question a month ago, if Notre Dame can control the perimeter, I would have been like, I'm not so sure, right? I'm not so sure because they've had a lot of issues out there. The last 3 weeks have changed my mind, right? I think they have an opportunity to be successful out there. Now, Cam Hart being questionable, right? Those are the head coach's words. Him being questionable, that worries me a little bit because I think he's been really, really good at tackling in space and preventing some of those big plays, right? So that worries me a little bit. I hope he's okay. But the questionable part, somebody's going to have to step up there because Benjamin Morrison's been really good in space. Cam Hart's been really, really good in space. I think Tariq Bracy has been really, really good in space. There's going to have to be another guy, whether that's Clarence Lewis, whether that's Mickey. Somebody's going to have to step up and be really, really good in space for that to be a check in Notre Dame's direction for controlling the perimeter. It's going to have to be. Somebody's going to have to step up. So if we're talking about somebody having a good game in the post-game show, in the open field that we weren't expecting, that's a check in Notre Dame's direction for sure.
So let's go to point number 5, Vince, and this is a big one. Frustrate the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing I love about Caleb Williams is he's a very emotional football player. As a fan, I enjoy that. That's kind of how Tim Tebow was, a very emotional football player. But as a young guy, that can get you into trouble a little bit. And you started to see it a little bit against UCLA early. He settled down, but UCLA's defense was not good enough to keep that going. You've got to frustrate him by mixing up your looks. Frustrating him means emotionally frustrating him and then mentally frustrating him.
Right.
And so showing certain looks. Now, this is where you need to take advantage of him being young. That is definitely something that you can try to do is try to bait him into a throw. Hey, against this look, he really likes banging this route. So let's give him that look. Maybe we'll even let him throw it the first time. But the next time, we're going to take J.D. Bertrand at the snap and just turn him and run him underneath that route because we know the ball's coming, right? Show this look. Hey, we're bringing pressure here. They bail. We bring a corner fire over here, something like that, right? Like where you get him guessing. And when he starts having mistakes, or others around him start having mistakes, he gets really frustrated.
Yeah.
Like visibly frustrated, right? And he started to do that against UCLA, and they couldn't capitalize. They let him go right back down the field the next time and scored. It settled him down. You have to make sure that you force then another mistake and another mistake and another mistake, because he is still young. And this isn't a criticism of him. It's just an observation that he can get a little frustrated. And you need to do that with him mentally and emotionally, get him frustrated. And that'll be a great learning lesson for him. But I think that's going to be a key for me, Vince, is to it's not rattle him, because I don't think you can rattle Caleb Williams. I mean, he's a pretty tough kid.
That was going to be a little bit of my pushback. Not pushback. That's not the right word.
It's not rattle him.
I was actually impressed, especially in the second half, how he kept
Settled
it
down.
all. I mean, I was actually very, very impressed by that, and almost a little frustrated as I was watching as an analyst and as a fan of the team that he's going to play the following week. It was like, man, this kid has a good head on his shoulders.
Yeah.
So if they are able to do that to him, if they are able to frustrate him, if they are able to kind of force him into making some mental mistakes, right? Then that's a huge win for this defense.
Because I feel like, Vince, he tries to put everything on his own shoulders.
Yes.
Right? And everybody calls him Superman. And I think he takes that to heart.
Sure.
And this is what I'm talking about. When I say he's an emotional kid, I'm not talking about emotionally immature. I'm not talking about emotional, like he goes and throws hissy fits on us. I'm saying like he gets really ticked off at himself, at those around him if they make mistakes, and he doesn't always handle it well. UCLA let him get back in a groove.
Right.
Notre Dame can't. Because as you said, Vince, he's a mentally strong kid. You're not going to rattle him. You're not going to get him afraid of you, or he's getting hit a bunch of times, and so he starts getting a little shy of getting hit. Nope. That is not Caleb Williams. You hit him, he's like that kid. Okay, next time I get the ball in space, I'm running you over because you hit me last time. Like, that's just how he strikes me.
Right.
And you want a kid like that on your sideline. But if you're Notre Dame, because he's young still, you need to kind of use that to your advantage by doing things that mentally and emotionally frustrate him a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he'll learn from it. And like my favorite quarterback of all time, John Elway, would that happen? That kind of hurt him early in his career. He'd just kind of get ticked off about how things were going, and then he would try to force a pass, right? Like you stop him a couple times, and then he's like, dang it, I got to go out and make a play. I'm ticked off that I missed that throw, so then I'm going to try to thread this one in between three guys. That's when you need to capitalize.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Getting him into those situations. I want to make sure people understand. I'm not talking about rattling Caleb Williams. I'm not talking about getting him to quit or things like 2017. I'm talking about frustrating him, because when he gets frustrated, he's more prone to mistakes, Vince. And that's what led to the interception, right? I feel like he was trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Right? Because they had gotten stopped on fourth down. They missed a field goal. He was visibly frustrated. And he goes out that next series and he tries to force a play. And he goes outside the system trying to force a play, and he gets picked off. Right. And those are the things I'm talking about, because he is still young. You can take advantage of it now, because he won't be that way, down the road, because he's going to have even more experience under his belt. Those are my keys.
And Ben in the chat says, and I'll pull it up here because I think it's apropos, right? He says, I think when he gets frustrated is when he breaks off a big run and quote unquote does it himself.
Right.
I agree with you 100%, Ben, which is what Notre Dame can't allow him to do.
Right.
You can't allow him to get that big play.
Right. And that's why we did this one last.
Right.
That's why we had, dominate up front, be disciplined, tackle well, protect all that stuff leads to this last thing, because if you're doing what you need to do, those run lanes aren't there.
Exactly.
But the second part of what Ben said is what I'm talking about. He's going to have this, fine, I'll do it myself mentality.
Right.
It's kind of like, we love to use movie things when you and I are doing shows together. It's kind of like, what was the Avenger? I forget the Avengers movie. Was it Ultron, Age of Ultron, or at the end where Thanos is kind of like, fine, I'll do it myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, oh, it's kind of how Caleb is, right? Because he does have supreme confidence in his ability, which is exactly what you want from a great quarterback.
Absolutely.
You want that.
For good reason.
But you can also use that to your advantage defensively if you can frustrate him. And I think that's going to be a key to this game.
Absolutely.
In my opinion.
Yep. Keep him frustrated, make him make mistakes. I mean, period.
Last one, special teams.
Yeah.
obviously the overarching we're going to use the loose emoji lessons of special teams. Do no harm is obviously key number one. If you get a field goal attempt, make it. Don't shank any punts. Don't give up long returns. Don't get yourself pinned because you made a mistake by not fielding a punt or trying to take it out 4 yards deep from the end zone.
Fumble a punt,
fumbling
return
a punt,
you're trying to make a play. You can't do that.
Can't have those, right? But I also think this is a game where you got to try and make a play, right? Where if they kick it to you and you catch it at the 5, man, like the kick return unit, I feel like whenever they have had a chance to return it, it's like they're not mentally prepared to return it. Because they're so used to just getting kicked out of bounds.
Yeah.
This is a game where Coach Mason needs to make sure his team knows, guys, you need to be locked in every time the ball is kicked because we're going to get a chance to break one. We're going to get one chance to break one, right? Where the kick goes where we need it. They make a mistake. And all we need to do is give Chris Tyree that initial crease. Give him that crease.
Bye-bye.
And that's the key, right? And so you got to make a play, block a punt, or because you go after them, you force their punter to shank one or to kick a line drive that your returner can then go. Because let's say you have a big return where you get it out to midfield. So the next time their kicker's a little gun shy and he kicks it out of bounds and you're getting the ball to 35, right? Like those are the different things that can be the difference in this game. Those hidden yards that come from special teams, make them go 80 plus yards every time they get the football. Right. And then give your offense shorter fields. Those are the things that how can you neutralize this game where your offense is here and their offense is here? Okay, it's the special teams where they got to go 80 yards every time against our defense, and we only got to go 50 yards every time against their defense. Now all of a sudden you're on a much more level playing field, and those are going to be keys to this game. Brian Mason's had a phenomenal year as a special teams coach. This is kind of that big game moment where he needs to step up, and he's done that so far. Right. This is the final chance of the regular season where, they got to find a weakness. You got to find a weakness in the special teams and exploit it. Whether it's a fake punt because USC tends to at times maybe take off running a little too early on punts. I'm just saying, a time where maybe they get a little bit too aggressive on the backside. So you kind of have a reverse on a kick return, something like that, where you kind of take advantage of those opportunities. You're going to get a chance to make a play on special teams in this game. You got to make it. And that's going to be a big key. That's going to be a big key. And, you could tie in the defense. Like if the defense can force them into more field goal opportunities and not as many touchdown opportunities, which is something this defense hasn't done a whole lot of this year, maybe get a chance to block one or something like that. Those are always key, very important parts of this as well. So the special teams is going to have their chance to make an impact in this game. And when they do, they got to make it. And they got to take advantage. That's going to be a big key.
I feel like during the post-game show, if we're talking about a Notre Dame victory, one of the things we're going to be talking about is special teams.
Right.
That has been, we talked about Notre Dame has to be who they are. Well, a big play in special teams, whether it's a block, whether it's a return, whether it's, the punter continuously punting inside, pinning them inside the 10-yard line. We're going to be talking about special teams. Because it's not just a do no harm special teams unit with Brian Mason at the helm. This is a special teams unit that is going to make plays. And in a game like this, you need all three units to make plays. And if Notre Dame is going to win this game, then the special teams are going to make a play. Whatever it happens to be. Maybe it's multiple. I don't know.
I'd take it.
But me too. Are you kidding me? Listen, if you're going to join us at 7 o'clock on Saturday night and we're going to watch this game together and we're going to do all the fun stuff, right? If you want to see me go bananas, have Chris Tyree return a kick. You know what I mean? Like have them block a punt. Like I will go but absolutely bananas at that point because those are tide turning plays.
Right.
And that's what Notre Dame needs when they're on the road in a game that they're the underdog. And nobody expects them to win except us and the people in the chat, minus Roger Dodger. Love the Twitter, man. Appreciate that. But those are the ones, man. Those are the ones. And so it's going to be fun. I'm super excited about this game, man. Super excited.
Because if this game becomes Notre Dame's offense against USC's offense, Notre Dame's going to lose.
Yes, agreed.
If this game becomes Notre Dame's offense and Notre Dame's defense and Notre Dame's special teams, against USC's offense, that's how Notre Dame wins, right? That's how they win because they made plays on defense, they made plays on special teams, and then the offense did its thing. Right. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm going to have an article coming out tomorrow, where Notre Dame has tied a record, I believe a school record of straight games with 35 plus points. And like Joel Klatt said something in that Colin Cowherd thing, and he was right. I didn't even really think about it because just the way that they play. But he said, Notre Dame in their last 6 games is scoring 40 points a game. And I'm thinking, that's not right. So I'm going to do exactly what I did now. So hold on a second. No, it's their last 5 games. I said, that can't be right. And so it's like, okay, 41 against UNLV, 41 against Syracuse, 35 against Clemson, 35 against Navy, 44 against Boston College. Wow. They're scoring 39.8 points per game. He's rounding up for the sake of the conversation. I'm like, wow, that surprises me. Yeah, but the reason it surprises you because you don't think their offense is a 40-point per game offense.
Correct.
But then you look at it and thinking, okay, they scored 21 points against Clemson offensively. One of those was off an 11-yard drive, and they got a pump block for a touchdown and a pick 6. Right? They scored 35 points. It just didn't feel like the offense did that, which is a compliment.
Yes.
Look at the Syracuse game. The offense was solid, but they weren't great. Right, but you had a pick 6. You blocked a punt that gave you the ball at the 2-yard line, and you had another shanked punt that got you in field goal range. Like as soon as you got the ball, basically, you need like 1 first down to be in field goal range. Like it's those kind of things where all of a sudden your offense doesn't have to go for 450 yards and 40 points.
Right.
And I think that's what's made Notre Dame so good, Vince. It's like the UNLV game. The offense played pretty average in the first half against UNLV, like maybe even below average. They scored 30 points. Why? Because they're like 4 possessions that started inside the UNLV 40-yard line. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you're going to score a lot of points when you get the ball and you have to go 30, 40 yards every time. And so those are the things where you look at and say, yeah, that's why they're so good. And the point of the article is they're scoring 40 points a game right now because of they're playing great team football.
Right.
And that's the key.
And that's the key. Yeah, 100%. Because this offense by itself is not a 40-point-a-game offense. And anybody who says that it is nuts. They're just not. But they've taken advantage of what the other parts of this team have given them to score those points, right? And obviously the defense has put points on the board. The special teams has put points on the board. It's been a lot of fun to watch. And this game is going to be fun to watch, period. Like, I'm really looking forward to this game because this is the first time in a long time that I have felt like all 3 phases of the game are phases of the game that can not just do no harm, but be really, really good at times and can also score points at times. I haven't felt that way in a really, really long time. And so watching this game and what I'm anticipating and what I'm expecting from this Notre Dame team is I'm expecting the offense to be better than average because I think that's all that they need to be. Don't turn the ball over. The defense is going to be able to do their thing. They're going to hopefully frustrate Caleb Williams to a degree. They're going to be able to stop the run. USC is going to put up points. They're going to get yards. That's going to happen. And the special teams is going to be special. If those 3 things happen, we're going to have a great postgame show, Brian. We're going to have a great postgame show.
Absolutely. It's not going to be easy. It's possible. It's not going to be easy.
Absolutely.
Right? This is a really good. USC is a much better football team than I thought they're going to be this year.
I agree.
And it would be lazy to say, oh, it's because the schedule ended up not being as tough. And that's true.
Yeah.
But they did what they needed to do against those teams, right?
Still better than I thought they would.
Notre Dame's schedule, they lost to Marshall and Stanford, right? UCLA didn't lose to USC didn't lose to those teams. They've done what they needed to do. And so this is going to be a challenge for Notre Dame, and they're going to have to play. They're going to have to bring their A game. You're not going to walk in there, play your B- game against USC and win this game. You're just not. You're going to need to bring your A game. Will they do it? Find out. And we'll find out.
Hope so.
But this is going to be a well-schemed USC offense. It's going to be an aggressive USC defense. I won't say well-schemed, but an aggressive USC defense. Notre Dame is going to have a great game plan. They're going to have to execute it. They're going to have to play physical. And they're going to and here's the thing. Playing Notre Dame football is going to entail taking USC out of their game. Can they do that? I don't know. We'll find out. But I think these keys that we discussed are the ways that Notre Dame can get that done. So that's going to do it for this portion of the show. We do have some questions, and we will have some super chats. So if you want to get those questions in now, get them in now. We don't have a ton right now, but we do have some super chats. So we're going to get to those here in a minute. But before we do, Vince, people need to hit that like button. need to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, sign up for the message boards. I can't even point to it because I got something else different. Boards.irishbreakdown.com is how you sign up there. And then check out our main website, which is irishbreakdown.com. And if you're listening via podcast, please give us a 5-star review. And if you have not done so yet, you're going to want to subscribe to the CFB Nation channel. Right now, we're bringing all those feeds into the Irish Breakdown feed for now. That's eventually not going to continue, or eventually going to just have those exist only on the CFB Nation channel. So if you love the content there, and it's great content in my opinion, with the exception of the playoff show today, because I was on it with Bill Bender, but Bill did a great job anyway. But the Lucky Lefty pod is great. The CFB All-American pod is great. John Garcia's he's got a recruiting show that I'm going to cut up and put up for tomorrow, kind of talking about all the quarterback dominoes that are falling. He's going to obviously talk about Kenny Minchie as part of that as well, because that was a pretty big domino for Notre Dame and for college, because obviously he's the number 80 player in the country on the SI 99, which is what John puts together. So you're definitely going to want to check all that out and be a part of what we're doing at CFB Nation. So before we move on to the mailbag, I just want to thank everybody. If you are checking out now, and we don't want you to check out, stay for the mailbag, because sometimes that's the most fun part of what we do. If you're going to check out, hey, happy Thanksgiving. And if you're listening to this podcast via podcast platform, it's already Thursday, and it already is going to be Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to you. Enjoy your family. We are very thankful at Irish Breakdown for all of you. And I'm not just saying that, I truly mean that. Vince and I were talking recently about how the insane growth we've had in 2 years, really in the last year. Yeah. When we're talking about, we're just hoping we can figure out how to make some money with this thing someday so we can keep doing it and not have to get real jobs, or at least I don't have to get a real job. and we're here now because of y'all. And, it's been a ton of fun, man. And we're just getting started, but we are truly, genuinely thankful to you all. I mean, where were you today, Vince? The dentist today, and somebody came up and said they loved the show.
Eye doctor.
Yeah. And we're so humbled by that and so thankful for that we have people that watch, but also people that care enough and invest. It's like we said we wanted to build a community, like a family, and I think we've done that. And we've even welcomed in some, Roger Dodger. He's been on the show this week, but we've seen him before. He's been in the chat before.
Yep.
Archer, or Ladarius Martin, or the Alabama fan. I haven't seen Antoine in a while. The Michigan fan, I haven't seen him in a couple weeks. So maybe he's getting ready for the Ohio State game and he's just locked in. But but it's a family, right? And it's a community, and we pray for each other. We talk ball with each other, and it's gone beyond my wildest dreams this early, y'all, and it's because of you. It's because of all of you. So we want to thank you very, very much. And I think there's no better time than to say that than now. On Thanksgiving, because that is definitely something that we're thankful for. So we want to thank you all very much and wish all of you a very, very happy Thanksgiving. It is mailbag time, Vince, and we don't have a lot, so we'll get to these here now. If you all have more questions, Vince will star them and we'll talk about them. But now we're going to do mailbag time and get to our mailbag, and we're going to kick off with a super chat from Tommy Guns. Tommy doesn't even have a question. He just wants to follow up with what we were just talking about. He says, happy Thanksgiving to IB and to all the beautiful people who have to deal with me in the chats every day. We love it, Tommy.
Well, Tommy's on his way home for Thanksgiving, which is awesome too. So
we love
it. Safe trip, my man.
We love it. And Tommy, I'll address the thing with you that you just asked. I'll get with you personally, and we'll kind of go over that. D-Troll Hunter also with a happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Let's go, IB Nation. Appreciate you, nice. D-Troll Hunter, very, very, very much. We have a super chat from Michael S., our guy Michael S., with Cam potentially out, Cam Hart, who replaces him, positive and negative consequences. I think the most likely option is that when Notre Dame goes with their base defense, you're going to see Tariq Bracy outside. And when Notre Dame was in their nickel package, there's really two ways they can go with it. And I don't know which one they're going to do. One is keep Tariq outside because their outside receivers to the field tend to be smaller. So it's not the mismatch that it would be if he's in the boundary. And you use his speed to your advantage, and then you go with a third safety in the slot. Or you could maybe put Jaden Mickey in the slot, and then you have protection behind him a little bit, which I actually think would probably be my ideal scenario. Or the other option is they could put Clarence Lewis in the slot and then have safety help over top of him. Or they could go Clarence Lewis outside to the field, and Tariq would stay inside in the slot, which then to me would mean probably more zone to the field with Clarence, I would imagine. So we'll see if that's the case. But, the negative consequences are one of your best players, it wouldn't be in the game in that situation.
Right.
If that's the case. The positive consequence, I don't know if there's positive consequences to him not being in I can't think of a positive of him not playing.
Right.
He's
your best option.
Right.
When he's healthy, he is your best option.
Yes,
100%.
he's a very good player. It's just about, can the other guy step up and get you through a game if he can't play.
Right.
So I think that that's to answer your question, Michael. It's positive consequences. The positive consequence is this: next man in philosophy wins the day, right? That's the positive thing. There's no positive to Cam being out other than somebody steps up and you're proud of the way that they stepped up in his absence. The negatives obviously far outweigh that. It doesn't necessarily change my mind on who I'm going to predict this week, but it's definitely something that gives you pause and makes you wonder how are they going to handle it if in fact he cannot go in this game. Tyler Evans with a super chat. If you're Al Golden, are you putting Benjamin Morrison on Addison or Mario Williams?
He's playing a side. He's not playing a man.
Right. So what you're saying is do what you do.
Correct.
He's gotten very good at playing the boundary.
Correct.
Let him, he's still a freshman. Yeah. Don't now put him out of his comfort zone.
Right.
Because you want to match up with him. You're not there yet with him. Right.
Right.
Let him just be who he is.
It's very similar to when Kyle Hamilton was a freshman, right? They just let him go out and play. They didn't put a lot on his plate as far as scheme and responsibilities and being a leader. They just let him play. That's what they're doing with Benjamin Morrison. They're just letting him play. You can't all of a sudden the last game of the season put all kinds of responsibilities on his shoulders and all these other things. That's not fair to him. It's not fair to this defense. And you're not going to get the best Benjamin Morrison, in my opinion, if you do that. Mm-hmm. Just let him play the way he's been playing, and he's going to be just fine. So he's going to play the boundary. He's going to be really, really good in the boundary. I guarantee you Caleb Williams is going to try to pick on him because he's still a true freshman. And my hope is that he continues to play the way he's been playing and he makes him pay for it. So, yeah.
Yep. Michael S. also says, is Caleb Williams to SC the same as Trevor Lawrence to Clemson? Yeah. Now, do I think Caleb Williams is as good as Trevor Lawrence? Probably not, but it's close. But he means as much
exactly
to their offense as Trevor meant to that offense, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, he is to them what Trevor was to Clemson. If you're going to talk individually, I'd probably put Trevor a little ahead of him. But I mean, he is the heart and soul of that offense. Yes. Emotionally, physically, playmaker-wise.
All the above.
He's the heart and soul of that offense.
This offense isn't the same without him in it.
Vince, I'll ask you this question that we were talking about this. Somebody said this kind of jokingly. I think they were saying it jokingly, but we answered the question literally. And somebody said, so what you're saying is if Caleb Williams is Notre Dame's quarterback, we'd be undefeated. And my answer was, heck yes. We'd be talking about Notre Dame being a championship team.
Yes.
And playing, they'd be a top 4 seed. They'd beat Ohio State if Caleb Williams is their quarterback.
Right.
In my opinion. He's that good of a player, in my view.
He would have been able to do enough to get the offense over the hump against Ohio State. No doubt in my mind. And they definitely don't lose to Marshall and Stanford. They just don't. They don't. I don't need to get more in the weeds than that. They just don't.
Because, he wouldn't have the same receiver talent he has at USC.
Correct.
But it'd still be pretty flipping good. Caleb Williams would love throwing to Michael Mayer, first of all.
Absolutely.
Braden Lindsey would have 1,000 yards right now.
Yes. Exactly.
In this offense, right? The backs would be effective. And he would have a better running game. And he'd have a much better defense on the other side of the ball, too. And all that stuff factors in. So maybe Notre Dame doesn't have as many yards and points as I think they actually would, though. I think Notre Dame would be scoring well over 40 points a game if Caleb Williams
agree.
Scored. And that's no disrespect to Drew Pine or Tyler Buckner. He's just that good of a player.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, if you ask those two, they'd say the same thing. Is Caleb Williams better quarterback than you? If you gave him truth serum, you know what I mean? Like that kind of a situation. It's not something you ask in a press conference. But it's like, yeah, he's just a really good player, period.
Yeah, absolutely. He's pretty good. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
Riza with a monster super chat, my friend. We appreciate you, Riza, very, very, very much. So this reminds me of old school Stanford going up against Chip Kelly's Oregon teams. Always gave them fits. 37-23 Notre Dame. Riza, we appreciate you so much, not just for this super chat, but all the others and all the support that you've given Irish Breakdown over the years, man. We are very, very thankful for you. I think the analogy's there. I think it's also because remember, Stanford, even before they got good, gave USC some problems.
Absolutely.
Remember, they beat USC in 2007 and then later lost to Notre Dame. Yeah. USC did, right? But it was that physical style of play, that downhill run game. This is a much better Notre Dame team than that Stanford team. But I think USC kind of sleptwalked through that game a little bit too. Let's be honest, because Stanford wasn't very good. But to his point, but here's the thing about the Stanford-Oregon stuff. When it worked, they were able to beat those Oregon teams. But there's also some years where Oregon beat them like 52-31.
Right.
You know what I mean? So It didn't always work. You know what I mean? It comes down to execution and playing your game and getting the job done. And that's going to be kind of a key in this game is, look, you got to execute. Your style can work, but you've got to have a good game plan and you've got to execute, Vince.
And it's a style that USC isn't used to this year. I mean, Notre Dame does have that advantage going into the game is that Notre Dame plays a style of football that USC has not seen. I'm not saying that USC can't handle it because we haven't seen them play it, right? And that also means that Notre Dame needs to bring that to the game. They need to get that on the plane and they need to go 3 time zones and they need to play that way, right? They need to be themselves. So, yes, that's an advantage for Notre Dame going in because they haven't seen it because, but we don't know how USC is going to respond. We don't.
Well, Vince, to your point, this is something from, and again, Reza, thank you so much for your super chat, buddy. Sean Stewart says this, the physicality of this team from Notre Dame has surprised opponents. Will that play something into the game as well if Notre Dame just comes out in their first drive and is physical? And I think there was no better evidence of that than the Clemson game. I mean, Clemson players said that afterwards. It's like they expected Notre Dame to be physical, but it's one thing to see it on film. It's another thing to
feel it,
experience it.
Yeah.
Right. And it caught them off guard. And then Notre Dame just kind of bulldozed them. That's what happened in 2017. Like USC was a pretty good team in USC in 2017. I mean, they were. And they were a top 15 team. They weren't as good record wise as this team, but they were still a pretty darn good football team in 2017. I mean, you had 42-24 win over a ranked Stanford team. They beat Texas that year. They beat Cal. They had an upset loss to Washington State. Then they bounced back with a 38-10 win over Oregon State. Then they beat a really good Utah team that year in 2017. And then, well, actually, Utah was good at that time. They ended up not finishing really well, but they were pretty good at the time. And then they come to Notre Dame and they just get curb stomped. And then after the Notre Dame game, they blew out Arizona State, smacked Arizona, beat Colorado convincingly, beat UCLA, beat Stanford in the Pac-12 title game, and ended up being a pretty good team at the end of the year. But the physicality of what Notre Dame had, they just weren't ready for. But then it wasn't just the physicality, as we've talked about. It was coming out early, hitting a couple shots down the field to back their defense off, and then the run game just took over. And so, yeah, it can be jarring if you play that way, but Notre Dame's offense still has to be a little bit more consistent in that regard. They're still, because it's still a relatively young offense. They still have to be a little bit more consistent with that type of play. But if they play their game and they play with the physicality we saw against BC, the physicality we saw against Clemson, then yeah, it's going to be, it can get you off. Like you think, I don't know if I want to blitz through this hole as hard as I did last time, because the last 2 times I did this, Blake Fisher destroyed me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I want to do this, or Zeke Correll just got up in my chest and knocked me down, or Josh Lugg buried me. Like, I don't know if I want that 320-pound dude landing on me again.
Right.
Right. I mean, that happens. Right. I mean, it's kind of like you get hit in the face so many times. Like, man, I'm tired of getting hit in the face right now. I think I'm not going to put myself in a position to get hit in the face again. And so, yeah, it can be that way, Vince. Will it? I don't know.
Exactly. And that's a big question, right? You said it best. Seeing it on film and feeling it are 2 completely different things. Yes, that is an advantage that Notre Dame has, but they have to use that advantage, and USC has to they kind of have to take it, right? Yeah. I mean, if they fight back and they're just as physical, then it's no longer an advantage. So you have to make it your advantage.
Yep, absolutely. Let's get down to here. Another one here from Michael S. Utah tight end had great success at USC. Good for Notre Dame. Well, It's not so much, in my opinion, Vince, that he had success and that all of a sudden immediately translates to success for Notre Dame. It's more about, I think, how you use your tight end is in areas where I think USC can be vulnerable.
Sure.
So two things. Number one, USC, to me, they'll play a lot of man coverage, and they don't have linebackers that can run with your tight end, with Michael Mayer, number one. Number two, they will also mix up with their man coverage a lot of zone fires. I mean, they're not a pure man coverage team. I should be more clear. They're going to be man coverage against Notre Dame because they're going to want to put the safeties in the box, and they're going to basically say, we're not going to let we're not going to, we're going to make you beat us with your perimeter guys. And so it's not that they are a heavy zone man team during the season. They run a lot of zone fires. They're going to try to do things to bait your quarterback into mistakes. The problem with that is that they also leave a lot of holes open. And that's where a tight end can have some success.
Especially the best one in the country.
Right, exactly. And so I think those are really kind of more of where it comes down to for me is being able to find those zones. And look, the kid from Utah is, I mean, he's the only other really tight end in the country that can match Mayer when stats, Dalton Kincaid. So, yeah, you're going to watch a lot of that film to see some things that you can do, but it's really just about their defense and how they play leaves them vulnerable to it because they can't stop the run with just their base, with just their box, right? And so that's if you're Notre Dame, you want them loading the box up because that means your run game's going and it's working. And that's where you can have some success. But it's not just Michael Mayer, it's the running backs.
Absolutely.
It's Mitchell Evans.
Yes.
It's Holden Stace. It's getting the receivers in space on some routes, some climbs, some crossers, some things where if you can run a crossing route, maybe off of like a short motion and you have a vertical release by Mayer and then Lindsey kind of comes from the outside on a little crosser. And if you catch them in that route again on an inside blitz, man, you get that ball out quick to Barry Lindsey and he is off. There's going to be things like that you can do if you catch them right. And that's what football is. That's what the chess match is. It's like, oh, what a great call, and like, well, they called the same thing 2 series before and it got blown up because they weren't in the defense. That's the chess match but I'm not going to give up on it because I think we're going to catch them in this on one of these third downs. And then the next time, you're in a 3rd and 5 or a 2nd and 5 out of this alignment where you think they're going to do this, they do it, you call that play again and bam, you hurt them with it. And so that's going to be a key. But, yeah, that's what we said. The stars got to be stars, and this is a matchup Michael Mayer should have success. Sure. I kind of feel like the only way Mayer doesn't have success, Vince, is if they just focus their entire game plan around him. And if you do that, then there needs to be a lot of other stuff that Notre Dame can go to in this game, like a lot of other stuff. Roger Dodger with a question. Our USC fan. He says, some Notre Dame fans think a spy for Caleb is a good idea. Does this take away too much from Notre Dame pass protection? Okay, I'm going to say this, Vince. I hate using a spy.
I know you do.
I can't. I don't think I've ever seen a scenario where that worked. Because here's the thing. Oh, well, what if it's Lamar Jackson? What linebacker on my roster can be 7 yards deep, and if Lamar gets in space, is going to catch him? I've had 2 linebackers in the last 20 years at Notre Dame that could do that. 2. Jalen Smith and Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa. That's it. They're not on the roster, right? And even then, I'm using those guys to attack.
Yes.
I don't like the idea of spies. There are times on 3rd and 12 where maybe I'm going to have my middle linebacker drop to the sticks to prevent the in-breaking routes.
Sure.
But if you see the quarterback taking off, you got to get downhill and get him.
Right.
Maybe then. But my spy is my defensive line. I don't need a spy if he's laying on his back.
Got to keep him in the pocket. Exactly.
But also if he's laying on his back.
Yeah, well, that
you know
too.
What I mean?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
And so I'm just not a spy person. I think if you're using a spy, it's because you don't trust your defense.
Right.
And Notre Dame didn't use a spy on Drake May. They didn't use a spy on – now what they did was they did some run stunts that then occupied the middle and he couldn't step into the pocket. And there was one time where they stunted Maris Luafau right into he was lined up outside and stunted right in the middle. Drake May tries to run on 3rd down and Maris is right there to blow him up. Do that stuff. Your spy is your call. But as far as taking a linebacker, a safety, somebody else and spying them, it's just not my thing. I'm just not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. Vince, you said that I'm not, but what is your stance on that?
No, I agree with you completely because it's a mismatch. I mean, and in my opinion, you're taking one out of your defense because now you're playing defense with 10 most of the time, unless he takes off, and then you're in a mismatch anyway. And that's, look, football's a numbers game. It's about matchups.
I'm sorry. This was just really funny from Roger Dodger.
I
USC had a spy on Vince Young, and he put LOL on there. Like, yeah, how'd that work out? Like, he's admitting, like, how'd that work out for USC in that game?
Right. Exactly. So if it's a numbers game, why am I playing defense with 10? And when the 11th guy gets involved, it's a mismatch. Like, that's not a matchup. That's not what I want from my defense. So no, I am not a spy guy either. And I will say that over my years of knowing you, you have converted me to that.
Yes.
And duh.
In high school, maybe it's a little different, but like
correct,
because this level of college football, I don't think it works.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yep. All right, let's get to some more questions here. We have this from let me find it here, from Tyler Evans. We have a super chat from Tyler Evans. So I'm here in LA and I forgot how USC fans are rude and annoying. P.S. I'm going to the game.
Well, have fun, Tyler.
I've never really been around a lot of USC fans, to be honest with you. So
I have, and I hate painting with a broad brush over an entire fan base, because it's not fair, to be honest with you. USC fans are LA people, and generally LA people they kind of have an air about them. They kind of have a snooty kind of that's always been my impression of the overall arching USC fandom. But I will also say that my cousin is a USC alum. We're real close. I went with her to a USC pep rally in Chicago one year, long time ago, when I was still in college. And it was before Notre Dame home game, obviously, with USC. So it was in October. They were super nice. They were super welcoming to me. I mean, it wasn't like I was wearing Notre Dame stuff, but I wasn't wearing USC stuff either. So I stuck out. And, they were all really kind people. But the general essence is they're all kind of, they're LA-ish. They're Southern California LA people.
They're Hollywood.
Exactly. So, I hate USC. I want to beat them every time, but I don't really have a problem with their fans like I do, I don't know, Michigan fans, for example.
Ohio State.
Yeah, exactly.
LSU.
Yes, 100%. So there is a respect for me for USC fans.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you answered that, Vince, because like I said, I've never really been around any of them.
Sure.
I've never that I can think of. I've never had USC fans trying to run their mouths on Twitter disrespectfully. I've never, I've been on a couple shows with USC beat writers, and they were very kind and gracious and complimentary of the conversations we would have. And so, just my limited experiences, but it's just so limited. It's just kind of hard to say that that's the case, but that's just kind of, that's kind of my experience. So, but again, there's going to be jerks, just like
always.
there's Notre Dame fans that I think are jerks.
Yes,
I block a lot of LSU fans on Twitter because they're idiots, but I've blocked my fair share of Notre Dame fans as well because they don't know how to act. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So everybody has those.
Right.
Everybody has those.
That's why I don't like painting the broad brush. You know what I mean?
With some people. With Michigan fans and Ohio State fans, I have no problem painting with a broad brush. Yeah, because it's reality.
Not a good experience at either place.
Yeah, they're kind of.
I'll say that.
They're kind of. Yeah, they're kind of what's. Kind of what's. So. Yeah. Irish Mills 540. Brian, who are you on the phone with? Keon, Peyton? All jokes. My wife is who I was on the phone with. So she's much more important than Keon and Peyton, to be honest with you.
Those are true statements.
So yes. Here's an interesting question from Joseph Barrett. It says, Brian, was Reggie Bush the best USC player you have ever seen? My answer to that is he's the best offensive player I've ever seen from USC. The best player I've ever seen from USC, to me, is one of two players, and they're both defensive players. Junior Seau and Troy Polamalu were phenomenal football players. Reggie Bush was a tremendous player. He was the closest thing I've seen to Rocket Ismail in college, as far as just the dynamic. Like every time he touched the ball, you kind of held your breath a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, what's this cat going to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was incredibly fun to watch. And a great player, but he also was surrounded by other great players, which made it a little harder to defend him because you had Lendell White, you had Dwayne Jarrett, you had Matt Leinart. Those teams were loaded. so this isn't meant to take anything away from him, but Junior Seau was special. I mean, and Troy Polamalu might be number one. Like, he might be number one on that list. He was an unreal, when healthy, an unreal college football player, in my opinion. Just because it's like, what position does he play? I don't know. Like, defense?
Doesn't matter.
You know what I mean? Like, they just used him so uniquely. And I think that's what was special about Reggie Bush, too, is Reggie Bush wasn't a traditional running back. I mean, he would catch, he would return kicks. I mean, you didn't know where he was going to get the ball. And that's what made him so fun. That's what made Rocket so dangerous. Like, early in the game, he's outside, he's catching go routes and screens and all that. And then the fourth quarter, they put him at tailback and they're running toss sweep with him. And you're just like, seriously? You know what I mean? Like, now we got to deal with this after you've been hammering us with Anthony Johnson and Rodney Culver and all these guys the whole game. Now you're going to throw Rocket at us in the fourth quarter when we're tired and throw a toss play to a guy running a 4-2. Like, you got to be kidding me. But that's how Reggie was. I mean, he was fun to watch, man. He was a ton of fun to watch. And this is why I kind of laugh. People say, Notre Dame's got to lower their academic standards. Reggie Bush was a really good student. He could have easily gotten into Notre Dame. They recruited him. He
was recruited by Notre Dame.
Yeah. And he was over 3. He did not come to Notre Dame because he couldn't academically get into school. It's because, well, we know some of the reasons why he went to USC, but he was whether they paid him or not, he was a West Coast kid. He was going to end up going to USC, especially in that era. When he was coming out, that's when USC had just started getting good under Pete Carroll, and it was a great player. So, but Troy Polamalu is probably my number one. And maybe somebody can make a case for Seau. I barely remember Seau in college.
Yeah, and I don't.
I was like 10 or 11. I just remember thinking, man, this guy's really good. As a 10 or 11-year-old, because he was drafted in 90. So it was like that 88, 89 years when Notre Dame was really good. Seau was on the other team, right? And they had Mark Carey was on that team. Willie McGinnis was on that team a few years later. Like, man, they were putting like NFL dudes out every year on that defense. But Polamalu was special for me. I mean, he was really, really good. Really, really good, Vince. What's your answer to that question, Vince?
Well, for me, it's Reggie Bush. And I 100%, like, I love your answer. And Troy Polamalu, like, I remember Troy more from the NFL, I would say, than I did from college.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. That's just how my brain works. But I remember Reggie Bush from college, not the NFL. And you said it best when you said that every time you touched the ball, you just kind of held your breath.
Yeah.
That's how I felt watching Reggie Bush play the game.
Right.
Like, it was straight up jealousy that he was on USC and not at Notre Dame. Like, for me, like, he was so good. It was like, man, it would have been great to see him in blue and gold. So yeah, he's the one for me.
So just real quick, some people are saying things like, so-and-so is the best player they've ever had. And I'm like, well, that's fine. Guys, Anthony Davis. Michael, that may be true for you, but the question for us was, is Reggie Bush the best player we've ever seen? I wasn't born when Anthony Davis and Charles White were in college. I wasn't born when O.J. Simpson was in college. I wasn't born then. I never saw those guys play. I never saw, those guys were out of the NFL by the time I was born, much less, seeing them in college. So Marcus Allen, the only Marcus Allen I remember is the one that for the Raiders and the Chiefs. I never saw him play at USC.
Yeah.
So Ronnie Lott's the same way. So just so we're answering who's the best we've ever seen. I never saw those guys. Just like I can't say that Joe Montana is the best. People say, well, why don't you ever bring up? I've had people. Why don't you ever bring up Joe Montana when you talk about the best Notre Dame quarterbacks ever? I never saw Joe Montana play at Notre Dame. Like, he was literally gone by the time I was born, right? Or no, I was a baby. I think because Joe Montana's last year was 78, right, Vince? I think it was 78. I was born in May of 1978. So like, right.
I wasn't alive at all. So
yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to anything other than eating and pooping and sleeping. That's the only thing I cared about that year. You know what I mean? It's kind of gross, but I can't speak to that. Like, I don't get into the greatest player of all time. Like, I can't tell you if Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain was better than Shaq. I never saw those guys play.
Right, exactly.
I can tell you the two best big men of my life were Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Those are the two.
I don't know if they were better than Wilt Chamberlain. I never saw Wilt Chamberlain play. Well, he scored 100 points in a game. I didn't see it.
Okay.
I wasn't alive yet.
It was a black and white picture. Right. Like, I didn't see that one. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure that wasn't even televised. Like, it was the picture afterwards of him holding up a thing that says 100.
Right. So that's kind of my thing is it's I always try to keep it to that. Now, what I love is when I talk to older folks, like, who can tell me about, because like I would listen to Loose Emoji about how good Anthony Davis was. And he'll talk about that second half what I think it was like 74. 74?
I think they were talking about it in the
right?
chat. The only reason
And where Notre Dame had a big lead at halftime, in the second half, Anthony Davis went off. And that was pretty special. But I didn't see that. I would love to see that.
Sure.
And that would be fun. But I just never saw those guys. So I'd love to have that chat someday, no doubt. So a couple more before we get out of here. John Wayne's Winchester with a super chat. Thank you. Styles make fights stylistically on paper. Do we match up better against Southern Cal or Clemson? Who wins, Southern Cal versus Clemson? Well, it depends on the side of the ball. I think Notre Dame defense matches up better against Clemson. Notre Dame offense matches up better against USC.
Right.
In my opinion. So that's what will make it interesting. Absolutely. Irish Mills 540. Brian, in the 540 in my name is for Roanoke, Virginia. Okay, great. That's a fellow Virginia or fellow native of the Commonwealth, as am I. I know you're a fellow Virginian too. Question is, do you see Notre Dame continue to find talent out of the state of Virginia? Well, they're trying to get Brandon Hillman, who's from Churchland, which is out in Portsmouth, and Chris Tyree. They're going to continue to recruit Virginia. It's just never going to be volume. It's going to be a kid here, a kid there, a Chris Tyree, a CJ Procise, and hopefully Brandon Hillman, who they're recruiting now. It's always going to be those guys. It's never going to be volume. But, yes, they'll definitely continue to try. There's some 2024 linebacker named Chris Jones that they're trying to recruit, who's a really good football player. So they'll recruit Virginia. It's going to be more targeted, Vince, than it's going to be like volume. They're not going to sign like six dudes out of Virginia like they did in Texas.
Right.
I don't think you're going to see something like that.
Right.
Somebody said, is the Coliseum run down from Derek Hart? I've heard it is. I think it is. I mean, and I haven't been since 2016, and it was run down. The city was running down for me.
And Roger Dodger said that they've renovated it in lieu of the 28 Olympics that are going to be in LA. So, I mean,
the 28 Olympics, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But I couldn't tell you. I've only heard bad things about the Coliseum as far as it being run down, to be honest with you. So but I've never been there. I've never been in California.
I don't like it.
So
I don't like it. I'm really not a fan of it. So, and then the last question that we have is this one. All right, where are we at here? Okay, it's from Charlie Weiss's Last Belt Loop, and he says, if Pete Carroll never left USC, how do you think they would have been as a program? I think they were kind of trending down, to be honest with you, under Pete. They were a little bit more vulnerable. We're losing games that they didn't normally lose. They had that bad Stanford loss in 2007, which was just a really bad loss because that was a bad Stanford. I mean,
that's how last year. 08?
I believe so. 09?
09?
09. Yeah, 09 okay. Was. And they went 9-4 that year. So they won the title. They won the title in 04. Lost in the title game in 05. 06, they went 11-2. I mean, they were still good, but they weren't the same kind of good. 2007, they were 11-2. They went 12-1 in 08, Vince, but it was it wasn't a great 12-1. It wasn't like they were clearly not as dominant as they were in the past. Lost to Oregon State. If you remember in 2006, if they beat UCLA on the road, and that was a bad UCLA team, UCLA team that finished 7-6 with Carl Dorrell as their coach, if they beat UCLA at the end of the year, they play for the national championship against Ohio State. And they choked and lost to USC or UCLA. Again, 2008 team lost to they beat Ohio State early, smacked Ohio State, but then lost to Oregon State the next week and pounded Notre Dame. They weren't a typical USC team. They're still good. And then of course in 09 they went 9-4. And there was also all the stuff hanging over their head with the probation and the investigation into Reggie Bush. He probably would have got fired if he didn't leave. And that's a lot of people said that's the reason he left. It's because he was going to get fired.
Right, exactly.
Because of the investigation. So I think they would have trended down. Now, they still would have been better than they were under Lane Kiffin and then Steve Sarkisian and Clay Helton, but they wouldn't have been what they were, in my opinion. So it was time for a change. And then Matt D says it, everybody. Hey, make sure y'all give us a like, hit that share button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, so you never miss a live show. Sign up for the message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Check out our website at irishbreakdown.com. A reminder, we will be off tomorrow on Thursday or today on Thursday, depending on when you're listening to it. Right. We'll be back at 1 o'clock on Friday to make our prediction show for Notre Dame USC. We'll also predict the Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State. We're going to predict all the big games from this weekend. Looking forward to talking about all those. We'll have Vince on there. We'll have Ryan on there. I'm hoping to get Sean Davis on there after he does his Lucky Lefty show.
Nice.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. But enjoy your Thanksgiving Day, everybody. We appreciate y'all so very much. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart, we are so incredibly humbled that you all have decided to jump on board with what we're building here. And it has been a blast. And what better way to end the regular season with my guy, the OG with me, Vince, talking Notre Dame USC. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. Notre Dame's won 5 in a row, looking for 6. Hope they're able to get it done. So, but we'll talk more about that on Friday. So for Vince, I'm Brian. Thank you all so very much. Have a great rest of your night. Have a very happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And we will talk to you again very, very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.